This is a regular meeting of the Allendale Land Use Board at which formal action, Linda, we are on, right?
Yes.
Thank you, sorry. At which formal action will be taken on the items listed on the agenda and upon any other matters which may properly come before the Land Use Board. The requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied through posting on the public bulletin board and in the municipal building and on the borough website and by publication in the record on December 29th, 2023, with copies being sent to the Ridgewood News. Certain agenda items will be open to the public for comment and/or testimony. The board will advise the public when such matters are open for their comment and/or testimony. Before we begin, I would ask everybody to join me in a salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And again, before we get into the roll call, I know it's a rainy night and everything. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Council, for us moving this out a couple of times. Thank you. Okay. Linda, roll call, please.
Vice Chairwoman Bergen. Here. Board Member Wozala.
Here.
Board Member Petrino.
Here.
Board Member Gugliaro.
Present.
Board Member Dallo.
Here.
Chairman Tirico.
Here.
Lieutenant Butler.
Here.
Lieutenant Conti.
Here. Okay. So, since we had our meeting last Monday, we don't have to have any conversation relative to meeting minutes or anything else like that. So, we are getting right into the public hearings meeting. Public hearing for this meeting. Mr. Kelly, I just want to be sure, before we go any deeper, that there's all this, with attendance and eligible people, and we are good and in order here. Am I correct?
I believe you are. I'm not very good at math, that's why I'm a lawyer, not an engineer, but I think we've got a full dais, full complement of eligible members, council, to vote on your case tonight. Should you get to a concluding point, so you've got 7 eligible members here. There was no further notice from the prior public hearing. We carried to this date, December 18th, for the meeting, so there was no further notice. I do see we have some neighbors here again, so everyone was aware of tonight's proceeding. And we have nothing further from our end. We'll confirm the exhibit number you're at, council, once you're up here and on the record. I think I know where we are, but once you're up to the races, we'll just confirm that as you go through the balance of your witness deck. But otherwise, Mr. Chairman, I think everything's in order to continue this case this evening.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so the application is file number 2024-04. The Allendale Rehabilitation and Healthcare, 85 Harrison Road, Allendale, New Jersey, 07401, Block 601, Lot 7. The application is to construct an 8,541 square foot addition to a non-conforming assisted living and skilled nursing home. And this is a continuance from the meeting of September 30th, 2024. Okay. Council. And I've asked Mr. Kelly too. I don't know how you guys work this out, but since we haven't been together since the end of September, I have a minor request, and I'm going to put you on the spot. I would like a 5-minute thumbnail review of where we are, if you could.
Yes.
If you would be so kind. Fair enough, sir. Thank you very much. And then we can get into everything else that we're here to finish tonight for both the benefit of the board and the members of the public. Okay? Thank you, sir.
This is our 3rd hearing. We met first on April 17th, 2024, and then again on September 30th, 2024. We've presented 2 witnesses so far. Ryan McDermott, architect for the project, who's not here tonight, and Teal Jeffers, the engineer for the project, who is here tonight, and is going to continue his testimony. The road was the last hearing. This is an 8,521 square foot, 1-story addition, southern part of the building. There's going to be a reconfiguration of the parking area, and that will include a maintenance of the 170 parking spaces that currently exist. Be no more, I know that. There have been some discussions about mostly related to trash and security, and the 3 issues that I believe remain following September hearing are, securing the entrance to Harrington Road, made it satisfactory for the public and the applicant. Securing through trash enclosure, through a gate, trash enclosure in the northwest section of the parking area that is near the kitchen, or one of the kitchens. And then the third issue is where to locate trash enclosure in southern. We have submitted 5 plans, which Shepherd described and discussed, which have specified place display gate across the Harrington entrance with a gate across the trash enclosure. Essentially 2 alternative locations. The original location that we last proposed and the hearing, and another location where we jockeyed. And the new parking spaces in the middle of the island, across the drive aisle, pretty away from property. And Mr. Jefferson's here to describe those changes. With respect to the southern trash.
All right, thank you. Michael, you don't have anything in there?
No.
We're just gonna proceed?
Yep.
Okay, as it continues. Council? Okay. Council, please. Floor is yours.
You're still under oath, Mr. Jefferson?
I am. And your license is still in good standing, I assume, just for the record. Very good.
Nothing happened between September and then, right? Look, I gotta keep it light, guys. I'm sorry. There you go. You're not doing the drones, are you?
Good evening, guys. My name
Yeah,
is, just to recap, my name is Taylor Jeffers, Jeffers Engineering, Associates on the civil engineer for this. What I'd like to do is talk about those 3 items that Mr. Rubin just brought to light. As you may recall, at the last meeting, we discussed the relocation of the trash enclosure to the southern side adjacent. There was some discussion around that location in terms of concern about the odor, potential proximity to the neighborhood. The board asked us to look at and locate that. So, Councilman, this was exhibit 8-2 that we had marked last meeting. That was our exhibits that were dated August 13th, 2020. Then the prior meeting, and then just recently.
And those are the ones that we were marking up and talking about
At the
last meeting.
When we transmitted copies of both of these, just recently to the board in our transmittal letter dated December 6th, with the copies. This is a point of clarification. We had mistakenly referenced discussion at the August meeting, but in fact, it was a September meeting. For clarification in those letters.
Okay.
The August meeting, as we recall, was.
Yeah. Yes. I just want to make sure that we all have that on the record. Fair enough. Thank you.
Following the last meeting, we looked at relocating that trash enclosure, that's what the option might be in terms of relocating that into parking. And this exhibit, which is the exhibit dated December 5th, 2024, proposes central layout that relocates the trash enclosure from the southern corner of the parking lot adjacent to the addition, across the drive aisle into the island of the parking area. It positions the enclosure on a diagonal to allow access for a trash truck when they go around the building. As you can see here, it's set, put it in red just so it visually jumps up and it's easy to identify. Set on the diagonal, the trash truck would approach, be positioned in the drive aisle, and then have the K-turn to exit. This would then allow the parking spaces that are displaced by that location be reestablished here, as well as here in front of the addition. This location would cause us to have to relocate a existing light pole, stormwater pipe, and inlet. As you can see in this exhibit, we are showing the area around that blue stripe. Because currently it's a paved area and it's very tight. The one thing with this location that we wanted to bring to attention is it doesn't lend us much avenue for landscaping around it or screening around it because it's now in a prominent location in the middle of the park. The original location that we discussed at the last meeting positioned trash enclosure on the southern side and would allow us to put in some additional supplemental plantings in and around and immediately adjacent to the enclosure. Board had raised some concern about the proximity of that to the neighbors. There was a question with regard to odor. Talking with the client, the trash enclosure will have a lid. However, as we all know, controlling the odor within a dumpster is very difficult. So from that perspective, relocating the trash enclosure to the center, so further away from the residents, it might help from an odor perspective or potential odor perspective, but it then provides some limitations in terms of screening.
How far off the property line does that move? So for the benefit of everybody. Approximately. Or the delta from where
Maybe approximately 80 feet
80 feet off the property line, where the original
as compared to
40. Okay. All right. So we've doubled that.
we felt that moved it in. We limit our ability to landscape because of the area around it. We preserve the perimeter landscaping. And really, we defer to the board in terms of the preference.
Okay, so let me, I'm gonna be a little bold here and something. If we would like to see some level of, I'm gonna put the word in quotation marks, screening. Okay, and the concern is parking space and loss of parking space. If board was in favor or so favored that we gave you some relief on parking space, because we've all had these conversations about how many truly parking spaces are occupied at any given time, and I know we're in this environment, employee area and all of that. If we gave you some relief, how many would you need to try and landscape screen, whatever? I know it's like, I'm sorry we're doing this now, but what the plan is to present.
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. And it really comes back to what perspective, from what perspective are we screen? If we're looking at perspective of some neighboring castles, then our screening should really be focused in the southern
part.
From that point of view, if these 6 parking spaces were eliminated and that area converted to landscaping, that would enable an area here where we can plant some additional evergreen trees. In effort of screening the view of this trash enclosure from this adjacent residence.
6.
That's correct, that would be 6.
And counsel, I assume that Mr. Kennel is going to be up next after Mr. Jeffers concludes as a witness.
Taking the hallway.
And sure, I see Scott diligently writing notes back there. So I'm sure we'll get into this further with the next witness as well.
And if I may, if I'd like to go on to the other.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that actually was a very good question. I'm glad it was brought up because that then potentially address the issue.
And if I can just interrupt for 1 second. So just for clarification and to remind everyone, we're talking about an area that's strictly for employee parking, right? This isn't a part, this parking area specifically isn't for the general public. It's just going to be for employee parking.
That's correct. And that over the prior meetings, the question would come up as to whether we put something somewhere here indicating that this is employee parking only. We were so yes, this would be.
And when we talked about that sign was just at where you're indicating where the garbage truck is as it enters in that area. That is correct. Roughly.
That's correct.
Right on that corner, right?
Right on that corner. Okay. All right. And also that landscaping would potentially also help with, to a certain extent, the beeping from the truck backing up. To a certain extent.
It would lend to some noise. Offering.
Okay. All right.
But this new revised plan with the trash in that, island, you're already eliminating some parking spaces compared to the other, right?
He actually, what was displaced, we added here and then we filled in during the.
Okay, so there was no
So we're
change.
keeping the field about there, no loss.
So in other words, it helps you out if we gave you some relief on some of these parking spaces that are conceivably for the employees or in the employee area of that without hurting.
Correct. Understand that we're requesting a variance as it is for the existing parking space.
Okay. All right. All right.
The variance helps out the neighbor.
Perhaps. Mhm.
On the plan, but what's the distance from where you're proposing the trash enclosure? What's the distance from the edge of that to, I guess, the edge of property or the heavier line on the bottom? Is that like the edge of is that the property limit there?
This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the property line.
That's right. So potentially, if you were, right now we're at 82 feet, if potentially you were to relocate it, just hypothetically, where we're talking about giving you some parking relief. Again, it's hypothetical, but what would that, how far back would that push it?
This location where we show it proposed to be located. Sorry, I misunderstood.
So on the drawing, if I'm not mistaken, there is another area in front, I guess.
Are you referring to the original?
Yeah, how far was that? That was closer, right?
That was closer, that was approximately 38 feet.
So from 38, potentially we would go to 82. Correct?
Right. Roughly twice.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Actually, I have a question. So where you're showing the new enclosure, 80 feet, 82 feet, it's into that parking area. I don't see the need to eliminate the spaces opposite it, because we essentially, you have the curb line anyway. You could be planting and buffering at just behind that curb line anyway. There's really no need from my vantage point to eliminate parking.
On this side of that curb line, there's existing vegetation.
Right.
Trees, some understory, some of the prominent trees are shown here, but there is, canopy and foliage through there, vegetation through there that's not shown there. But it really would limit us if the board wanted us to put in supplemental plantings. It would be limited to some understory planting here. So we could salvage and keep the existing vegetation just that was there.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
If I may, just kind of continue on.
Can I just ask you one question about that? Supplemental planning, which you discussed, would they provide any additional visual buffer given the distance between the home and the trash? Or do you need something that would grow higher to provide that buffer?
Could be in that this property sits higher than this area. That understory really would provide an immediate visual relief because it would stay lower and a lot of the view would be common. Really add to that screen, preserve and add.
Who knows if we have mixed vegetation?
And I don't want to testify, but just for the record, I was out there on Saturday just to make sure that we were moving in the right direction. And much of that vegetation that you see there is deciduous. So if in the winter, from that parking lot, what you see, there's a row of evergreen that's circle, no, up on the
Up high,
property of the adjacent property that screen the pool that's back there. And that's the buffer. In winter, you can see straight from the parking lot to those evergreens because the trees are deciduous in between. So if you really wanted to enhance that screen, the only way to really do it is to take those parking spaces and put evergreens there and grow with substantial height and supplement what's already.
Right, but maybe a small portion of the contiguous could come out and you could put green giants, but without impacting parking.
I'm not sure we can do that in our split because
You have a brook
because of
beyond, yeah.
Like, I don't know that we're gonna be allowed to rip out vegetation in the flood hazard area. And I'll defer to him on that.
We get into an area over here where we have grass swale, flood hazard area, preferences to leave the vegetation, and it's not, if anything, we can hope to turn something to it, which then, as you know, then limits what we can do within that existing vegetation. Unfortunately, it's a moving vegetation, and it takes a while for anything planted to reestablish.
To another thought, and I don't want to spend all night talking about parking spaces, but if you were to take those parking spaces come out, what, 18 feet or so? If you were to take 9 feet of that, and then you put 2 parallel parking spaces there, then you're only losing. Again, it's a configuration situation here. Go.
We're laughing because I just mentioned it.
Oh, wow.
The same.
Really fun. That's what we call my hair.
The one thing we would have to keep in mind, there is a fire hydrant here that we have to keep access to.
Okay.
And it's going to turn a little bit. But we'd be able to
So for a net loss of 4.
Doesn't your plan show some new specimens behind the curve? Am I not seeing that?
These are the existing.
These are the existing, okay, fine.
Okay, let's have that as issue. All right, board members, we can move on. Okay. Thank you, sir. So go ahead. I'll try not to interrupt you.
The other two issues that I hope to talk about is there was a lot of discussion last meeting with regard to unauthorized access to the concern about people entering and exiting there. What we'd like to propose here in light of those concerns is there's a chain link fence that comes up from the south side, the chain link fence on the north side. We would look to extend that fence out to the driveway and then put in a chain link sliding gate that would be have access control. So we have the ability to adapt to emergency vehicles or authorized access. But that would also then prevent pedestrians. It would prevent the Amazon truck from parking here, walking down the driveway. Some of the neighbors raised concern. Without putting that full gate through there that makes that fence contiguous, that condition could still. So this would be intended to continue that, prevent both pedestrian and unauthorized vehicular accidents. And then secondly, there was a comment and a question with regard to this trash area adjacent to the existing kitchen in the skilled nursing area. What we're proposing there is that area is currently open for view. We would be proposing to extend the 6-foot-high chain link fence with privacy slats and a gate also with privacy slats to prevent from into that area. So we wanted to try to address that. There are the 3 things that are shown differently on the 12.5 some exhibits that we submitted. And as I said, that's if the board has any comments or questions with regard to those, glad to answer them.
Is the existing fence that's there 4 foot, or is that?
My understanding that it is 4 foot.
Yes.
Sliding, I like the sliding idea. Um. So maybe this is for you. I'm sorry, John. Pardon me for a moment. Maybe this is for you. Accent, like for emergency.
Yeah, from an emergency standpoint, I have no problem with that. The only thing that I would like to see on it would be a SOS box put on it, for fire department use. Well, obviously you'd have the code box that's there for the code to be pressed, but also,
In case no one's, yes.
correct, but
There's gotta be an override.
right, the SOS box would be, siren operated. We had it in other complexes in town here. So that emergency service come up to it, hit the siren, a certain siren, and the gate will open.
In addition, put on.
Correct, yes.
Any relative to, I mean, that would satisfy.
Yeah.
And then because of the slide, there would be no open areas, they'll be able to walk around it. So we've at least got that part addressed. Okay. Fully blocked.
Can I just make one more comment regarding that? Will that sliding gate be connected to the generator system for the building? For the simple reason, if that,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Just thinking if you lose power to the building.
Yes, so. Tom Kilcore's.
He was sworn in previously, but I'm not sure we're picking him up, so if.
I think you might wanna, if you wanna sit up here,
Just really. Tom Kilcore, say your name and your affiliation.
So my name is Tom Kilcourse, I'm Executive Vice President of Plant Operations for Marquee Health Consulting. What about, in addition to what you're talking about, we also hook that to our fire alarm system, and anytime we have a fire alarm activation.
That's even a better idea. That's what I was gonna go with it next.
Okay, I think, I would prefer that too, so if you're good with
So-
that.
The other question, the reason I asked about the 4 foot, can it be higher for the simple reason 4 foot's easy to go over? Just having people coming from 17 come over. I mean,
I just, yeah,
sure.
I'm going right up Saturday, I put in Google Maps. Being flat time.
No, I understand that.
So that, I know that's been an issue, but I just.
Been an issue.
That. That's happened.
Did you try Apple? 'Cause
I don't-
Apple, okay, because Google was, but Apple was not. So I know that was,
So I certainly have no objection, nor would the owners have an objection to increasing that, if that's what
Correct.
the board and the.
because
public-
also by increasing it, it also gives it more of a barrier, of course, from the public view of it, but also from a safety perspective of somebody going over the fence and into the property.
Agreed.
Accommodate that. You have 4 foot extending for the sound, reality with the yes. Makes that's.
Correct, yeah. 100%.
I get it. I think that it's something that's necessary. I know that it's been an issue for the public. It's gonna be costly to us, but quite honestly, I think it's something we need to do.
Just so the record's clear and.
I think you said slotted, wasn't it?
no, that's slided around.
That's our trash area.
Okay.
Currently there is an open chain link fence. Public and for the applicant, or I just want to make sure that's in here.
Good with that?
We just recommend a brown vinyl. It helps to disappear in the landscape. Yeah, I'll agree. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
What top height, what's the top height we agreed to? 6 foot top height.
Which is outside of our. Outside of
but that's that would have to be part of the variance.
Okay, part of the granting of variance.
Part of it,
I know, we get into this whole what's front and what's.
yeah, we put in order to. Put the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, but again, the council, if we're asking for it and you're agreeing to,
And we need
we'll
to
put
be
it in.
better to get it than not.
Exactly. I'd rather have it as part of the package if you're agreeing to it. Okay.
Also on that same note, they follow the typically, this fence is all the property, the place that it's a permanent. That.
I don't think we have that. It's a fair ask if you had that requirement, but I don't think there's one.
So that part of it.
Non-issue.
Okay. I'll make
The
sure.
comment is place.
Right.
Like western property.
Okay. Board members, we're good? Okay. Thank you. Okay. You can, council, I'm okay with.
I'm really,
He's here on sick duty.
Yeah, I'm exceptionally under the weather, so.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
Fair enough. Okay. Board members, question of this witness on what we heard. Okay. Seeing none, we'll go. Okay. All right, public, questions of this witness on the testimony that you just heard. If you have questions, please come up, name, address. Thank you, sir.
Jim Brady.
Yeah, we're 1044.
Jim
I'm just
Brady.
gonna give you that so we can pick you up. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Pardon me.
244 Nottingham Road, Ramsey, New Jersey.
Can you spell your last name, please?
BRIGGS. The trash and recycling in the northwest corner, project area 1. Is that being moved or that's still, that the original plan is still? Right. Right, okay.
That's the.
Okay, just wanted to confirm.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I bring it back to the board. Again, any questions? Okay, council, thank you. Sir, thank you very much. Thank you.
Scott Cannell. Here. Just state your name for the record, spell your last name, please, first, Scott, before we swear you in.
Scott Kennel, Kennel, with McDonough and Ray Associates, located in Manasquan, New Jersey.
Scott, would you raise your hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Scott. I know your qualifications very well, but perhaps put on the record
Sure.
so we can qualify you in your field of expertise this evening.
Sure. I'm a principal with McDonough and Ray Associates. I have over 35 years of traffic and transportation planning. I've testified in over 2,000 site plan applications. I've also been qualified in the Jersey Superior Court as a traffic expert on 4 land use matters. And I've been involved in many projects such as this, which involves parking and traffic activity.
Throughout the state.
That's correct, in over 100 municipalities.
Thank you.
License.
I'm not licensed. I'm qualified as a traffic expert. Right.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So our office prepared, going back some time, a traffic and parking study dated January 16, 2024. And as part of that investigation, we conducted traffic counts on the Route 17 access, where we installed an automatic traffic recording device to record hourly and daily traffic for over 10 days. And we determined that the subject site is generating approximately 600 vehicles a day, 2-way trips over a 24-hour period. And then the weekday peak hour is generally around 50 to 70 vehicles, and on the weekends, it's a lower amount, in the range of 40 to 50 vehicles. Again, two-way on the access drive out to Route 17. As part of the data collection, we also did extensive parking accumulation studies. We conducted those studies in August and October of 2023. And basically, we found that the parking ranged, even during shift change, around 100 vehicles parked on site where we have 170 vehicles. We have 170 spaces, and we had a maximum recording of 107 vehicles parked, and that was in that 2:30 to 3 p.m. during the shift change, which is what we would expect to be the peak parking accumulation. The time that we conducted the counts, both the traffic counts and the parking counts, there was ongoing internal renovation, so there were 294 beds available at that time when we did our counts. As the testimony has been presented, when the expansion and improvements are completed, there will be 316 beds. So in other words, approximately a 10% increase. So taking that in consideration, the peak hour weekday activity, the traffic volumes would increase 60 to 80 vehicles over a 60-minute period. So again, it's not a heavy, intensive traffic generator type of use. And then as far as the parking is concerned, with the additional beds to be considered, again, going from 294 to 316, we would expect the max parking demand would be 120 vehicles. Again, where we have an excess of 50 spaces available. And to the discussion earlier about eliminating those 6 spaces on the southerly property line, in my opinion, it wouldn't affect the operational aspects. There'd be more than ample parking on site to accommodate the peak demand. That's basically
When you did those studies, and I'm sorry, you said that you did it over a 10-day period. I'm going back to the report from January 16th, 24. It dated that dated that.
correct.
But the actual dates,
The dates that the automatic traffic recording devices were installed were from July 31, 2023 to August 10th.
okay. So, summer months. The reason why I'm questioning holidays.
You know, I've worked on many other projects where we've been asked to do parking studies on, say, for example, Mother's Day, where you'd have an increase. Again, it's typically a weekend where staffing is generally lower. And then you have a situation where a lot of the people on site are taking day trips. They're going off site. So you have a combination. It's not where every resident or everybody that's on site is receiving guests. You'll have a number that will and some that will leave. And we found that the peak parking was no different than, say, a weekday peak period.
And in the
Can I
point,
just clarify this? I think there's some confusion. He did the traffic counts in July,
yes,
but the parking counts were August and October of 2023.
yeah, I was on the traffic.
So parking counts were done during October.
So it was a peak weekday. They weren't weekend counts conducted in October, but
Trip generation was when you did in July, right?
July through August, correct.
And just for the record, as you had made a comment, that people are coming in day trips, and those pickups generally are made at what point of the building? Like towards when you're first into the complex?
Well, yeah.
Very many pickups are visitors.
Okay, I'm just trying to.
Well, but sometimes some of the guests, they will leave for the day to go if their family lives in the area. Usually it's a little bit of respite to get off the campus and have a change of scenery. But again, we've been involved where we've done parking counts on Mother's Day, and the peak activity is comparable to what we would see during the weekday, where you have the highest employee activity.
Okay, and council, the reason why, where I was going was just to understand again, traffic flow, but that's the context of my question. No, please, I'll, no, sir, I want the challenge, I want you to.
No, I'm not challenging you.
I take the word, but what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to understand for the records of, for the public also.
Right.
So that they understand where we're going, where the line of thinking is going. That's it, that's what a
But
challenge, so.
very few residents have cars. So the traffic coming in and out are even employees, business. And so, and all of those people park on site. So if you take our October, still 107 vehicles on October 2023 during the change of shift. That's clearly an indication that traffic changes by.
And then the other important thing is not every employee has a vehicle on site. There's carpooling, there's employees being dropped off. So it's not a 1-for-1 as far as number of employees versus employee vehicles.
If we were successful in getting the Amazon, DoorDash, Ubers, and Lyfts stopped using this entrance here, is there a way to think about what the incremental uplift in the traffic would be coming in on 17? Would that have been accounted for in traffic study?
Well, we did the Route 17, but I would imagine if there is a bump at maybe 10%, nothing that can't be accommodated by that access to Route 17. I don't think it's going to have a negative impact on that Route 17 access. It's well below the operational aspects of it's well below the capacity of that driveway. So my opinion, it wouldn't have a negative impact. Obviously, it would have a positive to the neighbors.
And I believe that the renovation is for enhanced services and potentially higher acuity patients. And so do you anticipate more traffic volume, seasonality in the traffic as it relates to those enhanced services relative to what's being used for today? Would that create more volume for traffic?
And I'll defer to the site's representative, but based on my experience, our recordings during the summer, even the parking counts in October, is generally representative of what you'll see throughout the year. There is not a significant seasonal change. Generally what the basis for the parking or traffic is the number of beds occupied and the staffing. So my understanding the staffing would not change on a seasonal basis. It's generally consistent with what the number of beds that they have available and have occupied.
Scott, I just want to ask you something very quickly for the benefit of the public who may not be as learned in traffic design as you are, and it's only because we referenced Mother's Day a few times. If you could just confirm for the record, when you're designing a site, my understanding is you don't design for the anomaly. You don't design a Target shopping center for Black Friday. You don't. Just if you could maybe say something on the record about that, because maybe it'll lay some concerns that the public may have, assuming they do.
Well, it's generally consistent with the 85th percentile. In other words, it accommodates those activities at the 85th percentile. What is also important is that we've also reviewed national data that's published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, as well as Urban Land Institute, of recommended parking supply for these type of facilities. And we're consistent with those recommendations. And generally on the higher side of what is recommended in the recommended indices for this type of use. So taking that into consideration, the extensive number of parking observations, the traffic counts, it's all consistent with what we've seen in the data that's been collected, not only in New Jersey, but throughout the U.S. and published and recognized by all jurisdictions that I'm aware of.
I think perhaps that's helpful for your clients' neighbors to understand that. Thank you. I have no further questions.
I mean, I guess you had the opportunity to listen to a little bit of the discussion about the two options regarding the southern dumpster location. I don't know if you had a chance to study it, but I was just curious on if you had an opinion on an upside or a downside or one option versus the other from the traffic.
As far as the location of the dumpster or the parking post, that,
The two options where the dumpster was gonna be originally located in the corner versus moving it to the central location in the park.
I mean, the alternate design, it's within creating that island, 80 feet from the property line. Based on my review of the plans, as well as the turning templates provided by site engineer, that they can work just as fine as if it was located closer to the property line. So from a traffic operation standpoint, either location works well, but obviously to reduce the impacts on the neighbors, I'd suggest the alternate location.
And again, the parking spot modification, whether we give up 6 or we only give up 4, if my numbers are right.
Would have no impact on the ability to accommodate the peak parking demands.
Chairman, please, just two quick questions. Regarding there are two design waivers that are included in the application, the access drive width at the entrance drive and the circulation drive width. Have you looked at those and do you have an opinion on their adequacy?
Well, again, as far as the access drive width, you're referring to by where the culvert or bridge structure is?
Correct.
It's at that location of the site, it's low volumes, low speeds. And as far as I know, it's been operating safely and could continue to. I mean, the fact is you have adequate sight lines on either side of that structure. And obviously most people coming to this site are familiar with its operations. And as a result, my opinion, it could continue to function as it has been safely.
Then also they have some of the drive aisles go as low as 21 feet in width. Do you see any issues with that? I think they've proven through the circulation patterns of the truck turning movements that they work with.
That's correct. And that's the critical thing, to be able to accommodate emergency vehicles as well as the refuse vehicles. And site, based on the plans provided, can accommodate those larger vehicles.
Actually, just raised another thought. A couple meetings ago, I was kind of hung up on turning radii, the truck, the fire trucks, et cetera, et cetera. The new plans might not be an answer for you. Council, I apologize for going back, but has this been looked at by our guys, fire department, or do we see an issue?
I don't know if this was sort of, but nothing radius wise has changed, right? No turning radius, no nothing.
As far as the various locations of the site, no, and there were actually truck turning plans submitted with these recent, but based on my review, none of the improvements or modifications were suggested would impact circulation for large wheelbase vehicles.
Okay. I would like to get that. Just here, as I saw you come up, sir.
If I may, at the last meeting, discussed previous exhibit, and we had discussed that with the fire chief.
Correct.
He emailed back, he was very happy, felt that there was no issue with turning radii that we presented based on the location of the trash enclosure at the southern corner. We utilized the same truck, the same turning templates to evaluate your location. Show that here. They're going to have a very similar movement in terms of the K turn from the fire truck. Those trash enclosure at this location is non-obstructed.
Okay, but they have not signed off on this
That is
particular
correct. That is
plan. So the one thing that I would just ask, sorry, the one thing I would like to just ask is that it just is contingent upon a further review by our fire code official or fire official as okay, we're good with this, understanding it. Okay, if we could, please. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, coming back to the board. Question on anything that you just heard? Comment? Okay.
So last time we spoke about lighting. That resolved.
It was the whole issue of with the actual intensity of the light is gonna grow, diminish, will that change?
I believe that it was resolved in the sense that most construction, there would be light testing done and adjustments made if necessary.
My recollection was that there was a problematic existing light that was identified, that was
One spotlight that was definitely gonna be removed.
that was gonna be completely addressed, and they also agreed to do post-construction site visit and make any modifications to the light that may be necessary as a result of that.
I know what we're construction.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else on the board? Okay, as per the last witness, I open it up to the public, questions on the testimony that you just heard for this witness. Okay, seeing none, I bring it back to the board. Question regarding, what is approved, construction. Anything comes from nothing would come through Howard.
Nothing. Construction, no construction view. Currently, no construction view. Like. Public. But my understanding from the operators is that there's no construction view currently.
But maybe we can provide that fencing sooner rather than later in the equation, so that takes it as.
Council, we might be splitting hairs a little bit, but actually I was just gonna ask the same question. That the fencing block, a lot of the
Fencing's not
testimony,
gonna be able to be installed until after winter's over, grounds.
okay, but we wanna just be sure that no construction vehicles, which you've already agreed to, but no construction vehicles go down Harrington, but that then started to pose the same question that Mr. Dallo just raised, in my mind. Could the fence be like the first thing on the punch list, if you may?
Time of the construction.
Okay.
Anyway, I just.
We can achieve that with a temporary, if they had to, they could put temporary fence up there.
Yeah, but we can't put temporary up there with block emergency vehicles. They have to be able to access it through some kind of
I'm
code.
talking about a temp fence, but
Fully operational.
fully operational, there is temp fence for construction sites that allows you to have temporary gate. National
Those are
fence.
locked. I've never seen one that has electronic.
It wouldn't be electronic, it would be temporary for the purpose of deterring any construction or maintenance vehicles that enter from the residential side.
They don't want to have a padlock on that gate. That would be, I think we spoke about that at the end of the last meeting. You don't want a padlock on that gate.
I think a fence could be put in 12 months.
I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
Someone in all
commit
there,
to
they'll
anything
cut the
I
whole-
don't know anything about.
But
We're just asking you to make that a priority is what we're
Priority.
asking you to do.
Fair enough.
a priority, that's fine, because we're just trying to, I mean, again, a lot of the situations that we we're talking about for the residents was the in and out of that area, so we want to make sure, even though we could all sit here in the room and say, okay, nobody's gonna go through there. We just want to, no pun intended, make it more a little iron, okay? That's it,
We want to secure it to it as soon as we can.
thank you, sir. Okay. Board members, further? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Last witness is Paul Dry, professional plan.
See you. Just take a name for the record, Paul, spell your last name, please, first.
Paul Greigel, Grygiel, business address 70 Hudson Street, Hoboken.
Paul, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Paul, please give the board the benefit of your educational and professional background.
Yes, I'm a licensed professional planner in New Jersey. I have been since 1999. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I'm the principal of the Phillips Price Greigel Laney Hughes Planning Consulting Firm. Regularly appear before boards, including I've been before this board as an accepted expert previously in the past couple of years, as well as in 150 or so other towns throughout the state of New Jersey.
Your license.
It is.
Yes, you recognize it. Professional.
Yes, sir.
Were you retained by the applicant to review this application from a planning perspective?
Yes.
please give benefit for the benefit of your observations and conclusions?
Certainly. Given the amount of testimony we've heard and the amount of time it's taken to get here, I can go dispense with a lot of the background information, but I'd be glad to go into detail if need be, if there's any questions. The crux of the application from a planning point of view is the properties in the AAA residential zone. Previously, it was a permitted use of the existing use of the property, which has existed for going on a number of decades now. But at some point in the past, it became non-permitted. So we require a D2 variance for the expansion of a non-conforming use. Again, this is a long-standing prior use on the property. And just to put it in context, just before getting into the proofs, we're talking about an increase of about 7.7% in the floor area over existing. So it's a rather modest increase in one location on a site that is over 11 acres in area. So I think my planning testimony will follow up on that, and that's a key aspect of it, that we're not looking at a wholesale change in existing conditions compared to what's on the property today. There are some other variances as well, which I'll go through in sequence, but essentially they're both variances that relate to this being a single-family residential zone and having a long-standing use that has been non-compliant because it's a different type of use for some time. It's something that needs more parking, needs more pavement, larger buildings. So the bulk regulations for the AAA zone really are not relevant to a use of this type. Just in terms of the D2 variance that's being sought, I'll jump right into it. The board has, I'm sure, heard testimony before that there's positive and negative criteria that need to be met. Positive criteria is the special reasons. In this case, we're dealing with an expansion of a use that, as I've said, has been here for some time. The applicant's not seeking to introduce anything new to the area in terms of the overall use of the property. There will be some change in how it fits on the site, but really we're seeking to improve operations of an existing facility that's been around for some time, to modernize it. There's case law from the Burbridge versus Mine Hill Court case, which talks about improvements of making a property more acceptable in its setting. Here we're providing reasonable upgrades to enhance the care of the patients in the facility, modernizing the facility, how it operates, but also to address some concerns that we've heard from the neighbors and from the board and others regarding the existing operations on the site. But I do believe the site can accommodate these changes. Again, dealing with under a 10,000 square foot addition in the southern portion of the site that wouldn't be visible from nearly anywhere. Despite in addition to the fact that this is a property that's basically not visible for most parts of Allendale to begin with, but even from neighboring properties, we're talking about a very limited area. On top of that, with regard to positive criteria, just briefly, this is a inherently beneficial use. Under New Jersey law, there's a definition that talks about uses like this that promote the general welfare by their very being. Nursing homes and assisted living fit into that category. There's essentially a test, a 4-part test to go down. I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but that where you basically weigh whether what's being proposed is inherently beneficial and how where it falls on that scale. In this case, again, it's a valuable service being provided from the existing facility that we're trying to keep up to current standards. You need to look at whether there's any harmful impacts from the change. Here, again, I think we've tried to address everything we can. We're up to the last few minutes been working with the board to do that. And again, it's a residential zone with your access from a state highway, and we're doing all we can to make sure that's the only way to get to this property other than emergency access. You normally have to look if there's any conditions that could be conditions imposed to ameliorate any problems. Again, we're just trying to do just that. We've been having a back and forth in regard to the buffers, the trash, the access, fencing, and all of that. So, in summary, with regard to the positive criteria, I think all those positives clearly outweigh any negative impact. Just to move right along, if it will, to the bulk variances. Again, these are a number of standards. The first one that is a D variance is for floor area ratio, because you're allowed 0.119 currently in the residential zone. We're already over that at 0.32 and expanding it up to 0.338. So it's a slight increase, as I mentioned, about 9,000 square feet, so just under that. Again, I think in this case, the D4 variance for floor area ratio can be granted because we're talking about a very modest increase. Site can accommodate it on the overall 11-acre property. We're just providing changes in the rooms to keep them up to current standards and actually reducing the overall number of beds. So it's a bigger building, but not one with a larger patient population compared to what was there previously. Also, the building's design is being broken up into different, the massing of the building to make it, essentially more appropriate and not visible from neighboring properties. So I think that that variance can be granted. Just in summary, with regard to the C or other bulk variances, there's impervious coverage, which is a similar issue that it's a standard for residential zones. We're increasing it from 51.2% to 52%. So again, a modest change in the pavement on the property and other building areas. But again, again, a residential standard that's being imposed on a non-residential use. Any increase in runoff can be addressed through engineering techniques, to accommodate the changes. We're also, again, improving the overall site. So I think it's a modest change in the context of this overall development. The other variances just relate to parking, the number of spaces, the aisle widths, various things we just heard about. So I don't think you need me to go tell you more other than the fact that I think they can be granted, those and the impervious coverage variance to be granted their C2 criteria. The benefits outweigh the detriments. Clearly, we're upgrading the existing facility that it's operated well, but it can be improved, and the applicant's seeking to do that. And I don't think there's any substantial negative impacts of neighboring properties from these changes. Well, just lastly, we need to address the negative criteria. I'm going to go too much more detail, but put them in brief. Put them briefly, there's no substantial detriment to the public good and no substantial impairment to the master plan or zoning ordinance. I think as a planner, given it's a long-standing use being improved in this location, and for everything else I've mentioned with regard to the access and improving the conditions on the property, there be no substantial negative impacts on neighbors or the overall borough as a whole. And certainly with regard to the master plan and zoning ordinance, it's not permitted, but it hasn't been for some time. And given that's a long-standing use that we're trying to improve, it actually is beneficial to try to do that. The master plan even talks about this property being designated in the future for public and quasi-public or institutional use. That's in the 2017 master plan. So it recognizes this is not your typical single-family property. So in summary, I believe from a planning point of view, the variances all are justified and can be granted. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Board members. Questions? Comments? What we just heard. That's a lot. Go on. I really love it. Oh, no, there. And the requirements thereof, so. I'm gonna open it up to the public for questions of this witness. Okay, what you just heard. Thank you, sir.
Jim Briggs again, 349. For the witnesses that have been reporting in, our property is block 55 property, project area 1. Based upon the testimony that we heard, my understanding is that parking spots are going to increase by 5%. Project area. And light. And by your testimony, there's negative impact.
It's a fair question. The standard is whether it's a substantial negative impact. I think that given that it's an existing parking area and the applicant is improving, the lighting, for example, those existing conditions that are problematic and enhancing buffering and plantings, that it's taking existing, what's been there for some time and modifying it somewhat. So would it be potentially more impactful to you or a couple of neighbors near you? That's possible, but I think in the scheme of the overall site, it's not substantial negative impact. Public will have.
You will have an opportunity at the end of all of this to provide comments and further questions. Okay, anybody else from the audience? Okay. No, Michael, Michael and Ed, is there anything you guys want to add to this, please?
I would have raised my hands, but I believe the applicant's planner has provided you with proofs and outlined all the details that are necessary. I believe you touched on the master plan. I did want to identify, we have goal number 1 and goal number 2 that we've outlined in our memorandum, which talks about impacts to adjacent residential properties. I think the applicant has, through their planner, has provided the board with some evidence as to how they're mitigating those impacts. I think as one of the members of the public was concerned about lighting, I think what we're looking at now are types of lights that have sharp cutoff associated with them, dark sky compliant type fixtures. That helps to reduce lighting. One thing the board could look at as far as the detail in that regard, in weighing the variance that's being proposed, is whether or not some of those could be timed or motion sensitive. So nowadays you can do that with them. So that helps in the evening hours to reduce impacts to adjacent residential properties. That's just one thing I'd offer for the board. Can't be worked.
And that's technology that would have to be worked on.
Sure, and it's available technology. That we do a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the whole post-construction evaluation. I think there has to be obviously some level of security lighting in all the parking lots that are on 24/7. Exactly what that is on my expertise by a long shot. And I'm evaluating, adjusting, but I do agree that it's a 24-hour facility, but in the evening, night, in particular, for certain hours, due to security lighting, like particularly in the Northwest. Yeah.
So you would be willing to look at that as the project is going through the building?
I think that was acknowledged
Okay.
previously, and I'll reaffirm that, yeah.
Okay.
Particularly along the edge that's adjacent to residential properties.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this was downlighting, correct?
Yeah, all shielded is down, all the lighting that could propose is downlighting and shielded, but just to make sure that the spillage is limited and or eliminated entirely and so forth, that's what we'll do post construction. Work with professionals to accomplish.
Fixtures are very adjustable now. You can adjust their thin and spread where they go.
I think we talked about what the intensity of the LED.
Correct.
Color.
Yeah, we're in the color.
I don't wanna
Yeah.
get into, but I think that was even part of the discussion that we agreed to work on that as well, so.
Because a lot of the LEDs that you buy today, they're all
Right way.
not just that, but there's a setting on them where they come with a gamut of settings where you can go from cool to bright type of thing. So
I could clear it, and the LED headlights that I see coming at me the other way, I don't like them at all. Don't like them at all, so we'll work with the town to make sure that that's done.
Okay.
we just want to make sure the residents aren't going to have an impact.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's the priority. There's two priorities. One, to make sure that the parking area is lit appropriately and safely. And two, to make sure that we minimize it and eliminate all spillage on the neighbor properties, no glare. Absolutely.
That would be working. Michael, that'd be working.
Yeah, myself.
Brown final fence that because this way the extended cost. I know there's issues, I think, with employees partying, leaving rubbish outside also.
I don't know, but the problem is the brook's over there. And I don't know to what extent we would have to go to DEP to disturb anything that's within the floodplain of the brook. The brook runs all along that northern property line. You can see it right up there now. And as Mr. Jeffers testified before with respect to the southern part, which is influenced by the brook, we're going to do everything we can to not influence anything around the brook. I mean, the neighbors obviously are free to put up fencing of their own if they're disconcerted, but we have added hedges along all the parking spaces that face northbound to eliminate all lights from headlights that go in that direction. So all of those will be shielded by the hedging that we're going to supplement what's already there.
You have another? No, that's, I would summarize my comments, but unless you have specific questions on the proofs that we're offering.
I'm okay. Wait a minute. But on the plan is there and how the hedges as it relates to the parking places, are there any trees outside back that would be planted?
No, it's already there. It's already just like on the south side, there's already vegetation that's planted along that whole that whole fence line and property line, in fact, inside the property line by a substantial amount. Continuing to it, so this will just supplement what's already.
Maybe we could, you could consider, beyond the hedging that's related to that parking lot, some additional trees. Like you have a bunch on the west side, you know, possibly as it relates to Nottingham, behind the curve, behind the hedging, some opportunities to put some things in that would be helpful to those neighbors on that north side.
If you look at the plan, the brook runs between the parking spaces and the property line. You can't plant in brook.
Mike, I just want to make sure you have anything you want to add or question.
I don't have anything right at this juncture. I do have some notes when we start.
Okay.
Moving the process along a little bit, what we may be considering. But at this point, I don't have it.
Okay. Thank you.
I have no other. I've concluded my affirmative case.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. So at this point, we're gonna open it to the public for comments. We're done with questions and cross-examinations of the prior witnesses. Mr. Briggs, I see you on your way up here. We're gonna have to swear in anybody that comes up at this time because the public, are gonna be making points. Wherever you're comfortable. I
Wherever
suppose.
you're comfortable, but if you do choose to stand up, you could sit if you'd like, okay? And perhaps we're gonna encourage witnesses or the residents when they come up to sit. This way we have proper, pickup with the microphone, okay? All right, so.
Your name again for the record, sir?
James Briggs, BRIGGS.
We have your address on record a few times tonight. So, Mr. Briggs, now we'll have to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Please proceed, sir.
thank you. Good evening. My name is Jim Briggs. I'm here with my wife, Christine, and we live at 244 Nottingham Road in Ramsey. You may recall we were present in prior meetings for testimony on this application and had questions of some of the witnesses providing testimony tonight. As a reminder, our property is block 5503, lot 22, which is in the northwest corner of the subject property and adjacent to project area 1 in the plan submitted with the application. Appreciate the opportunity to provide comment. Thank the board and other community members here in advance for giving me the next 10 minutes or so to do so. I've reviewed the ownership structure for the property as included in the addendum to application for development and see its multiple levels of LLCs. While the addendum doesn't make clear the affiliation, I did want to note for the board, if they weren't already aware, that Trico Partners, real estate investment group based in Brick, New Jersey, that shares an address with the property owner, Allendale Real Property LLC, announced the acquisition of the subject property into its investment portfolio in the fall of 2021. By their own description on their website, Trico Partners looks to maximize investor returns with diligent acquisitions and value-added capital improvements. That's not to say they will be bad community partners, but their job is to maximize investor returns. Christine and I moved into our house on Nottingham Road back in the fall of 1994. In considering our move, we knew the property abutted the Allendale Nursing Facility. We didn't go into that potential purchase with our eyes closed. We learned at the time that the facility was built, owned, and run by the Giancarlo family for around 25 years at the time we were considering our purchase. We were able to evaluate and weigh the impacts of having that existing facility abutting our property. We went ahead with the purchase, taking what we felt were reasonable comfort that the facility would not materially change, as its use was now a non-conforming one, and that the Allendale Land Use Board would be entrusted in ensuring any changes did not negatively impact the community. We've learned from the application and from the testimony provided in prior meetings, including tonight, regarding the owner's proposed plans is that there would be an over 85% increase in the amount of parking at the facility outside our back door, project area 1. We also learned that there would be 50 to 70% increase in the lighting. I don't want to say lighting intensity, but in terms of the lighting structures, at least 50%. I didn't get an exact number at the last meeting. The existing lighting is already apparent and visible to us and our neighbors today. Some of my neighbors may have photos. Another 50% increase to that. I'm a finance professional that has spent over a 35-year career, among other things, judging the materiality of items to financial statements and disclosures. Not the same thing here, but by any measure, these changes certainly seem to be material alterations and additions to project area 1. Material to the property owners abutting that area. Materially negative impacts in the neighboring properties, I might add, not positive ones. My understanding is that in evaluating a D2 variance to expand the non-conforming use, a variance should only be granted if this board, based on the evidence presented before it, feels that the public interest, as distinguished from purely private interest of the applicant, would be best served by permitting the proposed use. In these instances, the board must also find that the granting of the variance will not create an undue burden on the owners of the surrounding properties. I've quoted that language from the board engineer's report dated April 15, 2020. It is my view that it is overwhelmingly the private interests of the applicant, and by extension, investors in the Trico investment vehicle where this property sits, that would be best served by permitting the proposed use. Mentioned earlier, in over 35-year career in financial services, I have some familiarity in the real estate finance space, a fair amount of familiarity in real estate finance space. I completely understand the applicant's desire to execute its business plan of transitioning the facilities mix, services and capacity to provide more skilled nursing. Makes good business sense, and it's in what they consider to be their investment group's wheelhouse of value-add opportunities that require more than cosmetic improvements to reposition the property. I don't begrudge that. But I want to be clear, this is no longer a family-owned property. The Giancarlos moved on after 50 years with their sale to Trico. Trico Partners presents this as a portfolio investment in its real estate investment group. As such, Trico has investors to satisfy by maximizing returns to them. When you were talking about a value-add opportunity, you need to monetize that value you've created if you are looking to fully maximize returns to investors. Not always, but occasionally that is going to be through a sale after you've been able to transition and stabilize the property. That's why Trico's prime person for acquisitions is also the prime person for dispositions. Both activities can be critical in driving returns to investors. One should not presume that this property will be a long-term hold for Trico. One needs to be able to look past Trico. The Trico team are diligent investors, as they present themselves to be on their website. They wouldn't have considered the granting of the variance application a given, and likely would have conservatively factored that into their acquisition. All the more reason a granting of the variance and a repositioning the property would likely benefit their investors the most. It's likely upside for them. I'm not suggesting that there is zero public interest being served by a revised mix of services that would be offered at the facility if the non-conforming use variance was granted. But as someone in his late 50s with a mother and mother-in-law in the 80s and a circle of community friends in similar situations, I honestly hear zero conversations or complaints about there being a lack of choice when it comes to skilled nursing and senior care living facilities in the county, or some vocalized sentiment by Allendale and Ramsey residents that these proposed changes at Allendale facility are long overdue and desperately needed by this very community. I just don't hear that. As I've said, I believe the big benefit would be to Trico and its investors, and because of the likely desire to monetize the value created by the proposed improvements, I'd say it's uncertain whether they would continue to be owners of the property long-term. In terms of undue burden on the owners of surrounding properties, I recognize that as a legal term, and I'm a finance and accounting guy, not a lawyer. I'm unsure whether you even need to consider undue burden if you find it's not the public that is best served by the proposed changes. But I see the term defined as significant difficulty or expense. With lighting in project area 1 increasing by 50% or more, with parking outside our backyards being increased by over 85%, I suspect the value of our home and that of our neighbors that abut the property will decline by some measure if this plan was to be approved and executed. As an expense, if you will, that we, the homeowners, would be burdened with. Not to mention the expense that some of the homeowners abutting the property may choose to incur for additional landscaping or other measures to mitigate some of the effects of the proposed changes. Using parking as an example, as noted in the application and testimony, planting in front of the parking spaces will only be in the 2 to 2.5 foot range and only grow to 4 to 5 feet. Not sure how much that helps contain lights from vehicle activity for a lot that has increased by over 85% when you were talking primarily split row homes on our perimeter. Never mind the noise pollution from the increased traffic activity of the project area. That doesn't even take into account the doubling of lighting. I do appreciate the thought that has gone into not placing the trash and recycling in Project Area 1 like originally anticipated, but the changes as a whole, which are very material to the neighboring residents of Project Area 1, still seem to be driven by maximum value add for the business and investors, with the neighboring residents being expected to accept it. I expected more focus on the residents by the owners of the non-conforming property at AAA residents of the district. To summarize, we and our neighbors on Nottingham went into the purchase of our homes with eyes open, understanding that the Allendale facility was our neighbor and all that meant with respect to the impact of its operation. Speaking for me and Christine, we feel we have been good neighbors for the last 30 years. We don't see that changing. We are fair and reasonable people. We did not go into our purchase, however, expecting that we'd be the ones to one day be burdened with the impact of changes to non-conforming use property that overwhelmingly benefits portfolio investors while providing only a modest benefit to the surrounding residential community. Troico, as diligent investors, likely recognize the granting of the variance as risk. We shouldn't be rewarding their investors at the expense of our neighboring residents and community. I respectfully request that you decline the application as presented. Thank you again for providing me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public who would like to make a sworn statement or comment for or against the application?
The 256 Nottingham Road. I am lot 24 on Nottingham Road. I have some pictures tonight.
We're gonna have to swear you in first.
Oh, yes.
Last, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And anything you introduce, first, I'm going to let counsel for the applicant confirm they have no objection to it, and then we'll mark it as evidence. We'll have to mark it as an exhibit. Once we confirm there's no objection, I'm sure there will not be. We'll identify it, we'll mark it, and then you can start discussing it in slides, if that's okay. Are you ready to go into those photos now?
Yes.
And this is a photo deck prepared by you, taken by you recently. Can you identify what we're going to go look at?
Correct. So you're looking at photos from my backyard, looking into the Allendale nursing home parking lot, and then from the Allendale nursing home parking lot, going in, looking forward to my backyard and my neighbor's backyard.
Taken by you sometime in the recent past?
Yes.
Okay. About how many photos, how many pages? Just for the record, so we always track this down later. It's a staple packet.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 photos.
Council, any objection?
And none of these have been, this is the first that this board is seeing.
Yes.
And the first that anybody else is seeing.
Yes.
Outside of your neighbors or yourself.
Yes.
Fair enough.
So these 13 photos, Ms. Latz, we'll mark it collectively as O1 for objector, Exhibit 1. Feel free to speak to them. Realizing they're relatively small, you might need to ultimately pass them around to the
Yes.
dais if you'd like the board members to,
Right.
to review them, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so, in my backyard, I have a fence. So past my fence on the Allendale Nursing Home side, there are tall pine trees. One of my concerns is that on the plan where my lot is, it says removal of evergreens. So my one concern is that if those evergreens that have been growing for over 20 years are then replaced with 3 feet
evergreens, I now have direct access looking completely into a parking lot. I have a bi-level, so my deck is high, my kitchen is high. As it is, if I'm in my kitchen, those lights, the headlights are coming into my house at all hours of the night. Again, I knew moving in there over 20 years ago, I'm fine when ambulances come and fire departments come and, because that's part of it. There were some years ago that some of those trees died. I went back and forth with the previous owners. They did put in smaller trees that gave me no privacy. So on a cost to my husband and I, we put in giant evergreens, which you will see in the first couple of photos. So that is my one main concern, that if those evergreens are taken down, that my lifestyle is impacted greatly. The second issue, which we've brought up previously at meetings, is that the garbage is being picked up early in the morning. We were assured at the last meeting that garbage is only being picked up between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Tuesday morning, the garbage was picked up at 6:10 a.m. The trucks are loud, they're making all sorts of noise. So again, we were told that something was going to happen, and there has been no follow through. No one is able to say when the garbage is being picked up and not being picked up. So the board doesn't know, the owners don't know, but the residents know because we're the ones impacted. The other issue is the employee parking. You will see in one of the exhibits that there is a couple of rocks where the employees park. They hang out on those rocks. They take their breaks on those rocks. So they're eating, they're throwing garbage. I have pictures of garbage. They're smoking, but they're not only smoking cigarettes, they're smoking pot. And in the summer, the whiff of pot in my backyard, my neighbor's backyard, I know it's illegal in New Jersey, but then they're going back into work. The music, they're leaving their car doors open, they're blaring their music. When they come at 6 a.m. in the morning, they are blaring their music. Again, the owners, nobody's there at 6 a.m. to hear this. Nobody's there watching what's going on except the neighbors on Nottingham. There was a discussion about a fence being put up. There could be a fence put up. I don't know if any of you have seen the way the brook runs. Brook runs this way. I'm here. I have a neighbor here. Goes all along here up to the route of 17. There is not enough vegetation and there's not enough landscaping, which you will see in this. So increasing parking spaces, increasing employees possibly, all these things are just more of a detriment to people on Nottingham Road. I really respectfully ask that you consider that this was a nursing home in a beautiful neighborhood of both Allendale and Ramsey. And now again, it's become a corporation. As Mr. Briggs said, we don't know how long these owners will have it, but what's going to happen in the future if we allow them to start construction, what's going to happen in the future when we have no constraints of what's going to happen. And that is my major concern as an owner of 256 Nottingham Road for over 20 years. So I would like to present pictures for the board to look at.
You could feel free to pass around. You could send it in Ms. Latz and it'll make its way around the dais.
Thank you. Give us a moment to review the photos that they come through. Council.
Mr. Rubin, we have a question for you that you could probably confirm about site operations.
Your garbage service that you have, since it was brought up as a question. That's a private service that you guys have, correct?
And if I remember properly, yeah, we did discuss this, and you were. Okay. And for the record, those guidelines that we were talking about were between 8 in the mornings. Okay. Last, you just heard that comment, okay? And it was something that we did discuss in the past.
Right.
The applicant, okay, so the applicant is.
Yeah, so I can, so benefit of everyone in the room, I have a running list of prospective conditions of approval, should the board ultimately vote in favor of the application. We haven't even started deliberation yet, we're not through public comment. However, we have a list of conditions which will be limiting conditions, by and large, that we would discuss on the heels of a board motion, whether it be a motion to approve or deny. Counsel for the applicant will confirm whether he agrees with what we've captured as those prospective conditions as being accurate during the prior hearings. They do include time limits on refuse collection, outside boundaries. We had 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. I hear Mr. Kukor say it was 6 p.m., 8 to 6, 8 to 5. That is going to be the range that the applicant would be bound to honoring if this application were approved, along with a litany of other conditions that we've already captured as prospective conditions. That one will be in there.
You're gonna.
Can I come? Yeah. So I just would like to get an answer whether those evergreens that are along the Allendale property that abut my property, where in the plan say removal of evergreens, are those very tall evergreens that have been growing for many, many years going to be removed and giving me direct access to the parking lot and the Allendale structure? And why would they be removed when they're very healthy trees?
So that's a question for the applicant. Well, what I'm seeing is an area that I see the notation near your lot.
Right.
It's referencing an area, not at the lot line, it's referencing an area beyond by the existing loading area. I'm gonna let the applicant answer
Okay.
your question.
I just want to,
I don't see them on this sheet as being immediately abutting your property, but the applicant's gonna have to confirm that for you and answer your question if they like at this point. At this point, we're in public comment, not cross-examination. The applicant may not offer anything, but Mr. Rubin, I leave it to you to address or not.
Okay, Mr. Jeffers, if you would like to come up and address what you just listened to.
And perhaps just that, Mr.
Just
Jeffers,
that.
so we don't have to, go through cross-examination extensively again, if at all.
And Mr. Rubin, I have no issue, sir, if you remain up here during the question.
I thought making more comfortable with that one.
Whatever suits, okay?
Just
Understand
from their
that
perspective,
public-
not mine.
Okay.
area that there is about 18 feet to get to that curve to the property line. The trees in that area, there's also the storm pipe that comes down to this. The exact location of the line is not shown on the survey. What we can do is, if the board feels appropriate, you're proposing this parking zone at 20 feet. We could request a waiver to reduce that to 8, shorten that, that disturbance, that vegetation, and then work toward it here, construction, making modification to that.
Maybe I'm. Why do you need the 4 parking spots there if you have 50 extra parking
Why-
spots based on what the trend?
And
In the application.
so if the board provided to you, really, on those, it's 4 spaces. If the board provided, that said, okay, look, forget the 4 spaces.
Well, forget the 4 spaces,
So that's 6 on the other side.
or 2 on, or 4 on the other side, if you want the 2 parallel. That's 8 spaces.
That's
in
8
total.
spaces that,
And we're talking about 150, according to Mr. Carroll, as the max with the improvement. 120, excuse me, 120 max. We have a 50 surplus now. If we lose 6 of them, or 8 of them,
Parking increasing by 85%. I'm not putting that out.
can you just explain what's going on?
In this area, currently, there are 36 parking spaces.
there's 36, there's 30, I'm gonna use the pointer as you're doing, so there's 36 in here, existing.
And what we're doing is we're changing the configuration, having a more efficient layout.
It's an increase of 75%.
Just that configuration. Okay.
You're
But
not
not-
increasing the footprint of the parking area at all.
That's what I wanna ask.
Yeah.
Correct.
You're just right.
From here to here, that is not modifying.
Well,
It-
you have the existing alignment, which is slightly, let's say, 1 o'clock
Okay,
to the proposed alignment, which is approximately 11 o'clock. So here we actually add a little bit of movement, but in here we'll putting it back. So we're essentially just rotating that alignment. So we have an efficiency of 90-degree parking space. That's what we're aiming.
okay, and then as part of remaining with the, I'm gonna quotation marks, the number that they currently have, they said, okay, we've got to come in, the applicant is coming in and saying, we have to add these spaces. If the board grants relief on these 4 spaces, this situation goes away, and it reduces the amount of spaces, but in the testimony of the traffic expert, you have more than you already need, or we will have more, with the addition of extra employees spaces. Okay. Does that capture it properly?
Are we limiting the 4 or the 12? Just the 4.
Eight are existing.
Right, I understand, but a few minutes ago, we talked about
Oh, and
12
and then
going
the
down
southern
to
part,
parallel or
4 in the
just
south.
4 in the north.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
And
the next question. That's the next question.
That'll deter people from hanging out there. On the garbage that we've seen the picture.
Okay. Frank, go ahead, please.
I'm just saying, I mean, the headlights facing into the rear of everyone's home, which is most likely in their kitchen. Why can't we get rid of those? Just so that, one, you're getting rid of the headlights going in, but you're also you're deterring people from parking there and hanging out. Seems like they're, it's a great place to work, like,
And if there are employees that are hanging there. I'm sorry, counsel, go ahead.
Just give me 1 second.
No problem.
I think it's reasonable.
I'm sorry.
I think it's reasonable. Moving each street. Yep, so you can move things like that. That helps everybody. That's okay with us.
That's okay to
We're
eliminate.
moving all 12,
all
the
12.
4 proposed and the 8 existing. Along the northern property.
And to add planting there.
Yeah,
give more
replace them,
screening.
well, planting, there's already.
You gotta add more
That's why, the 4, there's already vegetation there.
You gotta add more. I mean,
I don't think-
You gotta protect the neighbors.
No,
the
we-
quality of life. You got, there's a lot of stuff going on.
And you pulled a lot.
Let's slow down, let's just slow down, one at a time,
I'm
one at
sorry,
a time, please. I'm getting attacked from a lot of different angles, let's just slow down. If there's no cars facing those homes, I don't believe there's any indication that the existing vegetation is inadequate. Because there'll be no longer any cars pointing towards those homes. And there'll be no longer any parking spaces. And this obviously, when we take out the 8 spaces that exist, we're gonna have to plan some kind of landscaping to replace it. We're not gonna just leave unstriped concrete. But, and so that whole area will be supplemented automatically.
Counsel, respectfully, you did not have the opportunity to look at these pictures, did you?
No.
I would take a look at the pictures.
I've been
Oh,
there.
okay.
I know what's going on.
Okay.
Okay, what I'm saying is for those 8 spaces where there's a problem, those will be removed and replaced by landscaping of whatever the board believes would be appropriate. Question of whether or not the place where the 4 spaces will never be built. And whether or not that's adequate. What are we buffering from? In other words, there's no vehicles parking in that direction anymore.
Right.
So whatever vegetation where those 4 spaces have been, I think she wants to remain, we're not gonna touch that and will remain. So I don't understand what.
So is that a some grass?
The 4
Potential
spaces,
for your-
just
for
wait
your
a second.
top bill,
The
for
four-
your
the
top-
4 spaces will exist exactly as they are today.
Okay, but the ones that you were gonna eliminate.
We're gonna remove.
What goes there, grass?
We will put whatever you ask us to. If you want us to put a line of a hedge line there, we'll put a hedge line there. If you want us to make it lawn, we'll make it lawn. A hedge line obviously will keep people away better than lawn would.
Correct.
So that's what you're saying, what are you gonna do?
Right, so whatever you
Right.
want us to put there, we'll put there.
Since
Well,
you're not gonna need that, like, up to the north, can you put the fence down?
Yeah.
On the north
Because they-
property line now?
Yeah.
That would solve
That would solve a lot of it.
by putting a fence there across it. You won't have to
That's
worry
just the one
about
coming up the door.
the residents.
Since we're already
seeing
talking
the park-
Slow down. Too many people talking
Okay,
at once,
I'm
okay,
gonna-
please? Please.
Go ahead, please.
What I don't understand is, you just want a fence that would cover where these 14 spaces would be? Because the fence that exists already is much deeper towards the northern property line. I don't understand what you want us to do.
The same fence that you have coming down this way, down the northwest property side on Heritage, why not run it all the way down the north property side, bumping up to Nottingham, so it's consistent?
Wait a second, where?
Right where there's nothing now.
The Ramsey property.
Right in here,
Right.
counsel? Just tell me if I'm right.
That's exactly right.
Right along here. You're putting a fence, we've talked about a fence right here. Am I not correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were talking about the original intention was that the fence was gonna stop where your finger is.
But there already is a fence that runs across there.
Yes, but the fence is open and chain link.
Is that on the,
It's
is
in the
that on
photos.
their property, or whose property is that on?
It looks like it jogs over the property line at a point and it comes back.
There is open chain.
Right.
Correct.
Yes, the northern side is open chain link as well.
There's 4-foot chain link and then there's 3-foot chain link. 2, 3. Terminating here. Current. I'm not sure if that's our point or the applicant's meant to be. That it is.
Okay, so it's the neighboring fence. So if we were to install a fence, we wouldn't be removing the neighbor's fence. It's all that property. But I'm not sure. Are you intending or asking for us to put that along the property line or put that along the curb line that's down here?
Wherever it could fit to create blockage for sound, lights, party, hot smoke, all of that.
But,
A 6 foot round vinyl.
but,
Solid.
it has to be solid, number one, and number two,
Which is different than.
which is different.
Correct.
Okay. And the second thing that I would then have a concern about is that if you have a fence there and then you have a piece of land and then you have a chain link fence beyond that, is that inviting?
Creating a no man's land.
You got it.
It's gonna maintain it, how you gonna get equipment in. My suggestion there would be, if you're going to require that, put it on the property.
That's where that's where I'm concluding.
There's also a drain line through there and probably some other utilities that you wouldn't want to install the fence in that easement area. So I don't think, looking at the plan, it doesn't look like those utilities are on the property line, but there's someplace in what would have been that no man's land that would have been created by the two fences.
Property line makes sense.
The property line looks like, based on the information that's here, I haven't looked at the pictures yet, but probably the best location.
The only nuance with putting a fence along a property line where there's existing vegetation is that you may have to trim some of that vegetation. Or
Install the fence.
that's an expectation, just to be aware of. There's one other issue.
Or on that point, if a tree close to the property line, would be, that's, stop it, stop it.
Yeah, stop there. There's one other issue, and I've experienced this many times in my career, and that is that putting fences back to one another creates a disaster in between.
Yeah.
So even if you were to put this on the property line, there's the adjacent property owners have fences along that same property line, and I'm not really sure that you want to put back-to-back fences. I think that's problematic.
Council, I can't disagree with you. Give our engineer the vote.
I want the Hill Court to see. More important pieces.
Or the fair.
If I can offer, I think a landscape buffer probably be more effective than the fencing because of the existing trees that are there. Especially since you'll have a southern exposure on the development side of the property. That'll get those trees to be growing all the way down compared to on the northern side.
And it would be placed
Where the
all
parking
in front
spaces are.
of the existing vegetation.
We agree with that. It's a much more effective buffer than a fence would. I've been involved in applications for engineers that said that specific, that vegetative buffer, especially if you do staggered 2 rows of evergreens, that's much more effective from a sound and light point of view.
And council, on a personal note, I 100% agree with you because I personally do that. So I agree with, and it's southern facing, and these things are great. So, and they're very,
We agree with that.
okay.
If
Mike,
the
that's-
board variance to remove the relief, remove those 12 proposed, 8 existing and 4 proposed spaces.
Board? I think, sounds like possibly, plan to show it. 8 and that whole line.
We would be willing to submit it to your
Provide a
professional for
letter.
their review and approval, obviously, before we get any permits. That modification.
We're still in public comment.
We're
Yeah.
still, we're still in mid-Lexus. Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, before we do it, just one thing we have to reopen. Mr. Jeffers offered very limited testimony on the elimination of the spaces. That should satisfy the questions are answered, but we have to open up again to the public for any cross-examination on Mr. Jeffers based on that limited 30 seconds of added testimony he offered, if any.
So, any members of the public have any questions, as council just said? Okay. Seeing none, I bring it back to public comment. Now, are we concluded?
There's one more gentleman.
No, I'm not concluding that part. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Letch, you're satisfied, yes, with your questions and comments? We can move on to another member of the, well, this is your time, so if you're, okay, so we're just at, there'll be nothing else to volley back and forth. It's just the members of the public now, they're offering comments, so if you're done, okay, great, you're done.
Sir?
Benjamin Reyes, last name R-E-Y-E-S. I live on 264 Nottingham Road, and that is the blue house you just saw pictures of.
Just spell your last name again.
Yes, ma'am. R-E-Y-E-S.
And your first name?
Amin, A-M-I-N.
Thank you.
Mr. Reyes, would you please raise your right hand, sir? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
To piggyback on my neighbor's statements and pictures, as you can see, my house is fully exposed to the employees that park in those specific spots.
And to be clear, sir,
Yes,
your property is, again, for the benefit of everybody here, so that they understand on the board. These are the 8 spaces in here, so you're like right here? Okay, all right, just everybody on the board and the public understands.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
to reiterate, the parking situation is gonna increase by more than 50%. Every single car that passes through to park in that back section, I hear it. My family hears it, my kids hear it. The employees, that when they park, they come in very early, leave very late at night, play very loud music, smoke. I can't count on my hands how many times I've had to go back in from playing with my kids in my backyard because people are smoking outside. Major inconvenience, all the garbage, the rubbish that gets thrown back there. Taking a very nice creek and it's deteriorated and it looks disgusting. I found remnants of food in my backyard. Lobster tails. So I'm just, again, the increase in parking, the increase in lighting. We have trees back there, but in that particular section, you can clearly see my house. When winter comes along, all the leaves come down, the sound increases, the lights are glaring through my kitchen. So I'm just begging you to think and potentially help us come up with a solution to mitigate all these issues, as well as the increase in traffic that we're going to be seeing. Thank you tonight for your time. I'm not going to take much more of it.
So you just heard
where the board is putting forth eliminating proposed form plus the existing gate. And the plantings and the addition of the council has spoken, said that they would be willing to show a landscape plan. Would that help satisfy your concerns if in fact this was to be, because it would be a condition, a very strong condition of if this application was approved?
So the proposal to add, a sound barrier with greenery is, a substantial change from what's currently there. My concern is, what size shrubbery are we discussing here? Are we talking about adding 3-foot ferns that are gonna eventually grow into something that's gonna provide shade and sound, mitigation? Or are we planning on putting in fully grown trees that are actually gonna be effective immediately?
So, Mr. Reyes, maybe I can help you with that, and all concerns if possible. The board consultants to your left will have the final review, if this were acted upon favorably, the post-approval resolution compliance review formed by Mr. Snipes and Green. And they would have the final say. It's all within reason, but it has to be objective. The final say as to species, quantity, location of what will be planted and where. They were at every proceeding. They too are mindful of impacts, from an engineering and a planning standpoint. So it would be reviewed and approved by the Borough of Allendale effectively. This would not be left to the devices of the applicant alone as to what they're going to install.
Mr. Reyes, do you have is your property, you have a fence, you said?
Yes, but guidelines for Ramsey were limitation of 4 feet tall.
But you have fence that goes to the length of your property?
Correct, yes. And it's on the other side of the creek. So it's the creek runs around the house and back. Land is the fence there.
Sure, you could require a minimum height of planting.
I would increase that to 6 to 8, especially if we're considering a green giant arborvitae. You know, tend to come in very narrow initially, and we try to plant them close enough, but they do get gigantic. So you have to give them some space to grow. So there's that nuance.
And council, if I may throw a comment here, again, on a personal note, whatever is proposed, and that Mr. Stankus and Mr. Breland work with you, but they need to be deer resistant. And I'm not 100% sure giant.
Green
They are.
giants.
Thank you. Okay.
Viburnum,
Please, you're okay with that? Yeah. Whatever's gonna work. Okay.
Sure, it will.
Okay.
So thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I bring it back to the board. Council? So, just before I let you go, any other further comments from the board over your council? Okay, sir, the floor is yours.
I'm not one to make extensive closing remarks, particularly on an application that's been heard over 3 hearing dates. I think that we have made every effort to cooperate, not just with the board, public, to resolve issues that frankly, I walked in here not knowing anything about. I think representatives of the facility didn't know anything about, but now they do. And it's their job to take care of it. And it's our job to make sure that those problems are alleviated. Having said that, the extent that this board can help us do that, we accept that. But obviously, there's a limitation on enforcement ability that this board has none really. What it has is the ability to put conditions on which, you know, need to be practical and need to be, how can I say this? Something that can be implemented rather than something that is possible to control, like the sound of cars that might pull into a parking lot at whatever time of day or night. Um, this is a facility that's operated for very long. And I want to digress here for just 1 second. Frankly, the ownership of the facility is irrelevant. And I can't emphasize that loudly enough. The market has changed somewhat with respect to the needs of the community. And a facility like this lives and dies by its ability to meet the needs of the surrounding community. Accordingly, they are proposing a change in their bed count configuration between skilled nursing and nursing home. But overall, they're reducing the number of beds, 331 to 360. And I think that is a significant issue with respect to a D2 variance. Because the question of, while they may be expanding the footprint of the building in a way that really doesn't impact anyone or the operation of any neighbor, in fact, the intensity of use is declining because there's fewer beds. So I ask this board to vote favorably. We will agree to any and all reasonable conditions. We've gone through them quite a bit. We've already agreed to almost all of them, if not all of them. I'm sure council will make sure that I get to see the resolution before it's adopted by the board so that we can make sure that not only he's caught everything, but he hasn't caught too much. And I therefore respectfully request the application. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We have one lingering question for your operations witness. Don't mean to dampen your closing statement, but Mr. Kilcourse may have the final word here. We have one question for you, sir, and if there's any public questions based upon the answers, you will have your last links opportunity again.
So the borough had a public safety committee meeting, I want to say a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And it was brought up about how many times the volatile ambulance service goes to the facility. And they gave me some data. Back in COVID, back in 2019, that year they went there 20 times. Next year in 2020, it went down to 11. And then in 2021, it went up to 63. But after that, from 22 to 24, it went up enormous. In 2022, they went there 169 times. In 2023, they went there 156 times. And in 2024, they went there 168 times.
Not acceptable.
Correct. So, and that's taken away from the service to the town, the whole 9 yards. So, I know we had discussions about this previous meetings, and just wondering if you've done anything.
I have had conversations with the owner. After this meeting, I will have another conversation regarding the utilization of volunteers. Should not be going. I will reiterate that.
I know in the beginning statements were made that you would go back and forth between a private service and the use of the ambulance corps.
Correct.
Did you do anything with the study regarding the seat cost of having the private service there in 24 hours?
Now, we did look at this at another location. It's not cost prohibitive. It's very cost prohibitive. We looked at, we're looking at doing a project in Montville. The board asked the same question if we could do that, and it's just not financially feasible for us to have an ambulance sitting there 24 hours a day, 7 days.
How about during specific times of the day?
I can't say that that was looked at.
Okay, because that would help too. If during the daytime hours, they had somebody there.
You know, the town is cold.
I don't have the time, I'll be honest.
I mean, I'm just asking, what drives that drastic change? I mean, we went from forgetting about COVID, because that's an
Yeah.
extraordinary situation, but how do we go from 60 to 170? Like, what happened there?
I can't.
Either checking in
I
or
don't
checking
know.
out? Like,
I
what's
can't
going
answer.
on?
Again, that's a clinical question that I can't
Right.
answer. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, because that's
Well,
a major burden on
that's-
us.
At what point, forgive me, you might have this in testimony, at what point did you guys take over ownership of the,
It was August of 22,
so
2021.
21,
So
and the growth,
21, it shows a spike. And obviously this goes from 2008 to 2024, that you can see the graph on.
Like take a picture of it. Thank you.
So the previous owners that they have, but they were,
I can't answer that. I don't.
I know.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
no,
it's like,
yeah,
good point.
yeah.
Maybe they did.
I
It may
don't.
not be cost prohibitive, but
I
it would be
can't-
necessary.
I can tell you that I did the due diligence on the building, and at the time when I did the due diligence, and I was there multiple times, I did not see an ambulance sitting there for services. That's the only thing I can say.
So something.
I mean, from an operational standpoint, I mean, I understand you guys can't control the noise of the cars, but we had a situation with the garbage and that was supposed to be addressed and it wasn't. And my fear is that this continues to grow, and let's not to say that 160 doesn't become 360. I mean, it's a major issue for me.
Oh, no, I agree.
And I appreciate you trying to handle it, but it
And
it just seems like it falls on deaf ears when you leave here. I mean, you're probably doing what you have to do, but it either gets kicked down the road or someone's not doing what they're supposed to do.
That increase in ambulance traffic doesn't even come to the fact that this renovation is being done. That are more sick and need more urgent care. That could
Right, and it should also be looked at what they're calling the ambulance for.
Right. And that's my concern too. What's driving this
Correct.
call? I want to know what are they calling
Right.
for?
Or do they just need to transport to the hospital and they're calling it?
Right.
So,
Exactly. And I will look at that review. Sorry.
thank you. And just my last question.
Sure.
Regarding the radio survey, was there any movement in that
I
at all?
have not. I've not done anything in
Okay.
that. I will be doing something at this note of that.
I was talking to Chief Dillon about it the other day, and he said he hasn't received anything or any calls or anything like
Yeah,
that.
no, I have not done anything with it yet.
And if in fact this was to move forward in a favorable, we will request
Oh,
what's
absolutely.
written in there.
Yeah, and I've agreed to that. That's
Yes,
not-
and you
Yeah,
have
no, no,
agreed
no.
to that. And
Yeah.
you
Just
have
following
agreed
up,
to
because I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, no,
You have agreed to that.
Yeah.
Council, I have,
Position of radio survey as, my.
Radio, radio survey on new and previous building. New and current building. That was what was agreed upon. The radio survey was agreed upon on the new building and the old for the current facility.
Yeah.
So,
The entire facility being tested.
so let me ask the question. Are you okay with me doing the current building now? And then once we've completed the other building, if we go forward, having that time?
absolutely. Whether the board says yay or nay, it's just that the current building needs to have it anyway.
Okay.
So it should from a safety standpoint.
Absolutely. That's fine.
before you step down, council, I have of the witness, I have a question for him, please. We listened to residents raise the fact that in the current parking configuration, where your employees are hanging out, have lunch, whatever, by these rocks or wherever else, okay? I know you're not there all the time. I know
Yeah.
that, and I'm sensitive to that. However, what can be done? Well, let me ask a question first before I get into this. The back part area where, with that garbage area, I kept hearing, I thought that we had said that was the employee part. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay, so if the employees are hanging out, or whoever is hanging out in the front part by these stones along the property line of Nottingham, what can you do in your capacity to mitigate that?
So in my capacity, I have the ability to go to the owners and, which I'm going to be doing after this, and explain to them this was brought up. And this is something that's going to have to be controlled by the on-site administrators, which we have two. There's one on the assisted living side and there's one on the nursing side as well. That's ultimately their responsibility to provide supervision and leadership for our employees. It sounds like they have.
So it's your testimony that you will go to these people, go to your administrators, and work to enforce this. I don't know if this can be right in there.
Well, this was also agreed upon at the last meeting too. Has anything done?
Yes.
With it since?
Yes, we did. I had one single conversation, but we'll be having a conversation.
All right. We have any more questions? Go.
What was there for the indoor? Like, was there any stipulations that?
I'd like to try to get to the root cause of this, why we've gone so much higher than what the previous owners did. I need to find out why.
Exactly. It's right.
I have to find out what is the reason, so that, I've got to find the root cause, and once that root cause is found, then I can deal with the issue. How do we deal with it?
It comes across like it's a privilege.
No.
No. Right. And why would we go forward if that's
I understand and I hear exactly what you're saying. Again, what I can do is I can go back to the leadership of the community, and I have to find out why the calls. What are the calls? Are they just calling for transport?
ambulance for,
Sorry,
it's a volunteer ambulance.
I understand. Members of the public, if you have any further questions, Mr. Kilcourse, based upon this limited reopening of his testimony, now would be the time to come up with those limited questions. No takers? Seeing none. Mr. Chairman?
Bring it back. Okay. Okay. All right, back to the board. Discussion. Board's open to the board.
For me, there's a wish list of conditions, and if all the conditions are met, that is great. I just have very little comfort that those can be monitored, executed, to give us comfort. It might be able to be done for a month or so, but being familiar with the property, I'm just not sure how you're going to enforce any of the stipulations and requests that would be. That's fine.
I mean, the animal thing, and there's another thing to say that it went from 60 to whatever the number was, and I don't know
63 to 169.
and where does it go from there? I just,
like a kind of report that last week, that just, everybody knows what's going on. I mean, this is not like rocket science. That's the nonprofit organization that I'm supporting a for-profit. I'm not sure we're in good conscience, we could come, but that could fit.
Volunteers for jobs. That's taking away from their jobs.
Seems like in all the testimony, like the south side, moving the trash, all the things that we've tried to work out, restaurant fencing, and then the last piece of the puzzle is the north side, and removal of parking and privacy, training, but it's like the greater issue, we all want to do the right thing, is the facility and how.
That, like, so, maybe. Yeah. Like where they are. Black buffer.
We still have ordinances for the lights that are something that you repeat, so.
That's right, but you're not in the, we're saying, you have no enforcement authority. So enforcement authority lies with other entities within.
So, Mr. Maybe this is a good time for me to read into the record while the board's deliberating the conditions that we discussed to date as being applicant amenable and board required if they are going to consider this in a favorable light. Mr. Chairman, may I? Please do. Thank you. So I'm gonna run these off, Mr. Rubin. I'm glad to share with you my notes on this condition, should this move forward, so we can cross-reference during resolution, but.
As you read it.
Yes.
Pardon me for interrupting.
Yeah, of course.
As you read it, like, I would like to hear, okay, we're good with this, like, or no, or you just want to read them?
I'll read them.
I
Holler at me if there's one that.
Barely agreed to them, like.
Yeah, and then we can fine tune them. I did not capture anything in here, but for a few tonight that I have question marks next to, which I'll get to at the tail end. Every other one had already been affirmatively consented to by the applicant in some form or another prior to the hearing. So I'm gonna go relatively fast, Mr. Rubin and members. We discussed the gate to remain closed and only used for emergencies. HVAC units to be screened. The radio survey, which we discussed tonight, existing and the new structure. We discussed stipulation that the renderings that were provided were an accurate representation of the building, color, and materials that will be actually built in the field. It wouldn't be a bait and switch, if you will. We talked about the nightlight field test to be conducted post build out of the addition. In that regard, we talked about the exterior lighting has to be, of course, LED, dimmable, and/or turned off overnight if they can be for safety purposes. This is all following the look back post build out field test. Site lighting adjacent to the residential areas, temperatures to be 3,000 Kelvin. Storage pods to be removed post construction. We talked about utilizing best efforts to seek an alternative street address designation for the property. I realize that's difficult, Mr. Rubin. We're undergoing it right now on behalf of Carvana, another town. My associate spent half a year and still is nowhere. Could be her, it could be the town, it could be the USPS, I don't know, but it's very difficult, I understand that, but the applicant will have to utilize best efforts to modify the street address officially to have it designated as a Route 17 address if possible. And I think you should share with the board the efforts on behalf of the applicant undertaking that, so we know that those efforts were properly exhausted. New signage to be illuminated by ground lighting sources. Should be a sign for employee parking for the new building. Trash compactor to be utilized during business hours only. So let's call that 8 to 5 or so. Update the plans per the board reports. I think that's sort of a high level condition you'll have to do, and this includes but not limited to Mr. Vreeland's request to adjust the proper FEMA elevations and confirmation that there's no activity within regulated areas. Coordinate with the water utility provider regarding the easement amendments that are going to be needed. You'll have to do that anyway. Add landscaping to screen the refuse area to the satisfaction of the board professionals. That was discussed at a prior hearing before this was relocated. Mike, I may need your help with this. We talked about tying the trash compactor into a system if needed to mitigate smell impacts.
I think it was maybe liquid that was generated from the,
seeping through the
Yeah,
bunds of
you know.
containers with their.
I mean, it sounds like there's, it's gonna be enclosed, there's gonna be lid on it, hopefully it's operated properly. We won't have-
Well, there's a compactor that's gonna come in there. I think that was for the compactor.
Oh, yeah, you're right, that's good.
That's the leachate that comes out.
So, moving on to the stormwater management final design has to be addressed to address the increase in lot coverage. It's all subject to final approval of the board engineer and then compliance with regulations. In any event, applicant to utilize private service provider for the transport and ambulance needs. The areas near the emergency entrance must be cleaned and maintained. This is going to go for the entirety of the perimeter of the property. We'll discuss that shortly based on tonight's conditions. Has to be a Knox box block on the emergency gate. We talked about employees being prohibited from loitering in the park. We didn't get, that was tonight. I'm going through older ones we talked about first. I'm working my way there. We discussed employees being prohibited from loitering. We can expand upon this language, and I probably will. In the parking areas along the perimeters of the property during their breaks or otherwise. That seems to be a significant issue with the neighbors and concerns of the board. Moving on to what we discussed this evening. Adding the SOS box to the gate for the first response use. It's going to be siren operated. That's addition to the Knox box. And the gate will be tied into the facility generator as well. We talked about a fence replacement along the western side yard lot line, but now this was chain link we discussed already, but it was brown vinyl cladding was required at a 6-foot top height. And slatted was what I heard a few board members request after we discussed that. Yeah, that was requested during some of our discussions. Board members suggested it be slatted. They may feel otherwise, but that's a note I
That was
have.
the point of making it brown vinyl. So it would blend in and then it wouldn't need to be slatted. That's what I thought the purpose of brown
When you
vinyl.
say brown vinyl, you mean solid fence, is that correct?
No, he meant chain link, no black, but chain link. Normally you'll see black, but
That's what I understood what was requested. I didn't hear the slats.
Okay, brown vinyl cladding. Means it's open chain.
open chain link.
You're still gonna see through it.
Yes. You set back way from the property.
All right, I don't know. Can I hang on that one second?
Yeah, sure, we come back. This is
All right,
just
go
what
ahead,
we
go ahead,
discussed.
Steve.
We can come back to that one, certainly. Subject to fire official final review of the plan as modified regarding adequate access and circulation on site. You have your templates on there. We don't think it'll be an issue, but it's going to be embodied as a condition. All construction vehicles must access the site through Route 17. We talked about a potential earlier installation of the western lot fencing if possible. We realize it's tough to commit to it during construction, but we did discuss that this evening. We'll see if the board decides to act on that item or not. Mr. Rubin. Certain lights in the parking areas should be investigated as to whether they can be timed and or on motion sensors. This is to be determined in the field evaluation post-build, and it's specifically along the lot line areas contiguous to the residential lots, west and northern side, as we discussed. We're almost done. We're going to eliminate the 12 spaces on the northern end of the site abutting the Nottingham residences, and that area is to be supplemented with landscaping subject to board professional review and approval. The landscaping buffer along the northern lot line shall be along the entire frontage, subject to board professional review and approval. Applicant to submit a landscape plan, and the plantings are going to be a minimum of 6 to 8 feet tall at the time of planting. And the species is to be determined and confirmed by the board professionals. Well, quantities. The last item I have here is, I think, probably still up for discussion, board members. We talked about somehow limiting first response services to more appropriate emergencies. Who defines that is incredibly subjective and hard to do. And then the alternative suggestion was an ambulance to be located on site for a duration of time per day to mitigate the impacts to the volunteer service providers that we already discussed are being inundated. And that was it. I may have missed something, board members, if I did, or Mr. Sykes, Mr. Breland, but those are the conditions we discussed throughout the course of the 3 public hearings to date.
Council, one thing, just to be clear, we are eliminating 12 spaces from the plan or rewording it, eliminating 8 existing and taking the 4 that are proposed in the plan off.
Yeah, the entirety of 12 on the northern end
Entirety of
are
12.
gone, 4 of which are existing, 8 of which are proposed. That will be removed from the ultimate plan.
Okay, just want to be sure.
That will
that-
be landscape.
Just wanted to make sure that we had that properly called.
What about the south?
What about
Parking spaces in the south?
So, yes, we did not,
We didn't have
we
any.
talked about it, and then we were like, and then we said we would come back to that. So, yes, I would like to see those spots reconfigured to 2 spots. As long as we can have that perfect. And then use,
So, with the board's preference be to go, I guess, with option 1 or 2, right? That's the first. Put the dumpster enclosure in the parking lot, with the property line.
yes.
And then, and then I guess if that's the case, we eliminate all the spots that we're trying to be preserved, we'll try to provide as many spots as possible.
In my notes that I took for myself, I would like, I want to see area for the disposal where it's proposed here. And then I would like to see, if possible, a reconfiguration of the spots with whatever other vegetation as part of a screen that meets whatever you and Mr. Stankus agree that would help mitigate that part on the residential side in whatever configuration works. My point clear?
So it sounds like, at least from your perspective, you prefer to go with the dumpster in the middle of the parking lot.
Dumpster in the middle, yes.
And just to clarify, you would be adding minimally 2 spaces,
I
just so we know what the total number of spaces.
was thrown out to the 2 spaces, and now if I'm eliminating 12 at the other side,
Right.
and I'm taking away 6 at the bottom, I'd at least like to get back to 2. Even though we have an abundance.
So a loss
as we
of
heard of
14 from
So the loss overall would be 7. Like 12. Plus 6. But getting back to 60.
16, 12 north and 4 south. Right?
4 south. That's part. And those 2 spots become parallel.
Right.
As long as it doesn't hurt the,
I think you could still make the point.
all right, as long as it doesn't hurt planting, it doesn't hurt, I understood it was a fire hydrant.
Yeah, gonna have to work around the access to that fire hydrant.
Board members, that's just that part of it. Okay. Then I want to, but there's some, I don't want to overly burden the applicant, but I need clarification around, council, if I may, trying to use the words, my memory of what you said. What is best efforts? I need some level of definition here.
Okay, so let me, I'll explain this further. You can't compel an applicant to comply with a condition that requires third-party compliance. It's not enforceable. The courts have said it's unenforceable. So if the condition read the applicant shall obtain a new street address for the property, the Route 17 address, period, that's a condition that could be challenged by the applicant because it requires third-party compliance. That third party is not party to this proceeding. So best efforts, it's a term of art. It's very commonly used in conditions of approval. The best efforts is something that's going to be judged ultimately by the professional staff and the board members when they're in post-approval compliance. Did they get the Route 17 address, or is it still Harridan? Well, still Harridan. Why? What did they do? Well, they did X, Y, and Z. The question of whether X, Y, and Z was enough, and that was truly best efforts, is what the board needs to consider at that point. They say the applicant didn't do enough, you have to try more, but it can't be a shall, a compel, a must in this instance for third party.
Is there a time limit that can be placed on?
What are we on, 6 months right now with Carvana? Yeah, I mean, it takes a while. USPS is not terribly
They
cooperative.
gotta keep trying.
Council,
In other words, if it doesn't happen in 6 months, I don't want them to stop. They should just keep trying. However, he said it's already been trying for 6 months and they have been unsuccessful. So I don't want to put a time limit on the fact that their efforts should continue until successful and until told by the postal service no.
So I looked at Apple Maps, I looked at Google Maps, I looked at the things. Apple, directions go to Route 17, but the address hasn't changed. Google, same thing. It brings you to Route 17, but the address hasn't changed.
The address can't change.
No, it says 85 Harrods.
Correct, that's the address.
So, but Waze hasn't changed.
We can't change the address without Postal Service permitting us to do that.
Correct.
So it will always be 85 Harrington until the Postal Service says, yes, we agree to change it.
the 1700, Route 17 south.
Whatever. Until such time, the address will be 85 Harrington. There's nothing we can do about that.
And the requirement to use best efforts might
We
be
understand that.
perpetual in a way. I mean, eventually you exhaust all remedies. You can only get so much,
When they tell you no, give me a call, okay?
I only want a suite number. I don't even want a new address. And they told me yes 4 months ago. I still don't have it.
Okay, so I think I'm advising council, I'm satisfied with that. You know, I understand. I have to ask the question.
Understood.
Okay,
And it should be clarified what that means, absolutely.
okay. All right, so I'm satisfied with that part being done. Okay, the next thing, perhaps there was some, misunderstanding of the term brown vinyl cladding versus being opened with vinyl cladding versus black cladding versus being solid vinyl. So how do we want to discuss this, board members? Because they're two different fences, and then the next thing becomes, if you do brown vinyl cladded fencing, then do you slat it also to help mitigate?
Before we go, can I just ask a question?
Please.
Should the gate be visible through it? I know, but would emergency services want to be able to see through
I
to
think-
the other side of the gate?
I would be fine with a chain link fence with slats through. And that's the only way you're gonna get a solid fence. You can't put a plastic fence up and have it them.
Okay, but then I think what I'm hearing council ask is if we went that way, the fence at the gate, the movable gate, do we clad that? I'm sorry, do we slat that or do we leave it open?
Slat it the same.
They don't need to be able to see on the other side of the fence when they arrive.
I could ask that question.
Could you do that and just get back to me on that? And
We can make that, if this goes, council, if you're amenable, whatever.
Amenable.
Sorry, amenable, thank you to that.
Amenable either way.
Well, you know, we can make it a condition kind of
Yeah,
deal.
we
based
want to
on-
accommodate emergency services to do what they think is best. My understanding from past experience is that they want these open. They want to be able to see what's going on the other side when they arrive, particularly the fire department. And so that's my understanding, but I'm not an emergency services person.
So then we're back to, are we okay with brown cladding, that blends in?
I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well make it black, because I think you could have a much easier time to find black slats. I think brown slats are going to be very difficult to identify and find. Standard is black. And so I think that if you want slats, it should be a black vinyl fence, black slats. That's just, I mean, not vinyl fence, a black chain link fence with black slats. I'm just telling you what I know from having done this.
Ed, you raised that, I'm gonna kind of,
I recall seeing him in brown, dark brown, even the lockable ones.
I defer to him, I'm
I
just telling you.
swear. I'm gonna do a quick search. Keep deliberating. Okay.
People alternative say brown if it's available, black if it's not. That way. That's fine.
I don't find it for you, just may cost a lot of money.
Everything else is, throw that one on the pie.
those are the notes. I mean, I listened to everything that Mr. Kelly put forth here. You know, I'm also around this whole loitering thing. I would have to defer to the, you know, to the administration. I know it's very hard to, I
People like in the summertime want to go outside and get some fresh air. I mean, you can't really keep people locked in the building 24/7. They get breaks. They're probably hourly employees who have right to, you know.
Right, you can't put a burden on the
No, you can't
residents
do that.
around it.
Right, it's like, how do you solve that problem? Like,
Well, or is there a place that they could go? Like the part that's closer to, I don't know, I don't,
But
I'm
I
not
mean,
gonna start
just-
opening up the map.
yes, but, you know,
Designated
if they
area.
work in that northern part of the building and they want to go step outside for a 10-minute break, they're not gonna spend 5 minutes walking to the southern side of the building and then 5 minutes walking back.
That's an administrative issue.
Right.
That's
but
not a residential issue.
It's not a board issue. That's the problem. You can't really
you can't really tell people no loitering on your own property by your employees. What does that really mean?
Whatever,
Is
whatever
loitering-
administration tells you to do, you gotta follow.
But no, but is loitering them being outside for 5 minutes to smoke a little cigarette outside the window? What constitutes loitering? How long do they have to be outside, be loitering versus just taking a breath of air? I mean, in my office building, employees walk the parking lot to get their quote unquote steps in.
They throw their garbage in front of your building.
I won't talk to you about the garbage dumpster in my office building. But besides that, the plan that, you know, I mean, what constitutes loitering? Really, what constitutes loitering?
I think it's
That's up
tied
to
into
you,
the
manage your
location.
employees. That's
You
wasting
know,
time.
but I mean,
That's up to you guys.
people sit outside where they work all the time to get fresh air. It's part of like health. You want people to get outside and
With
get fresh
drinking
air.
and cigarettes and throwing beer bottles and garbage on the ground, that's health.
No,
You mean,
no.
it's a wellness.
Wait, I'm not here to
Yeah.
argue with you, please.
So-
But I'm trying to understand what kind of limitation you're talking about. There's one thing that this is an 11-acre property. And there's, you know, does garbage end up on 11-acre properties no matter where you may be? Probably. And do they have to do a better job of cleaning it up? Yes.
But it's not
Should-
on your
please.
property.
It is on our
It's on
property.
their
It's on their property.
That's
You
the
heard them
problem.
say that
Keep your
before.
trash on your property.
Well, that's what this, yes.
But you're not, and you can't enforce it. That's our problem.
Who can enforce it?
Not our problem, your problem.
I mean,
We can enforce
yes,
Yeah.
we're gonna do the best we can, but the question
The
is,
best you can is good enough, Lee. That's the problem, sir.
I mean,
Everything we've asked to do in the last 3 months, none of it's been done.
I don't know if I agree with that.
We just said we had someone come at 6 a.m. to do a dumpster. You said that was gonna stop last time. You said they're gonna get the radio things checked. That didn't get done at all. That's your goal for 2 months.
We don't have an approval yet.
How can we prove something when you've got 0 success on the things we've asked?
Please, listen to me. Please understand something. We're here to get an application to build an addition. We understand that there are administrative issues that need to be resolved. Probably just like there are in every facility like this in the state of New Jersey. So, yes, we will endeavor to do that. But let me make something clear. Those are not land use issues. Those are not issues that resolve around whether or not this application has the right to be approved or not. What they are about are administrative problems. And those administrative problems should be enforced by the enforcement authorities for the borough, which are the construction official, the public works official, etc. I understand this board's frustration. Believe me, I'm a board attorney. I understand where you're coming from. I understand how you want this site to be improved. I understand how you would want this site to be immaculate, however unlikely that may be. But the fact of the matter is it's their job to do the best they can, and if they don't do it, and you have enforcement authorities in town to crack down on them to make them do it. But that is not part of a board approval.
Well, it's a mitigating factor on your D2 use variance case.
But it's not, because the expansion has nothing to do with that. The expansion is in the south part of the building.
You're not managing what you have now you're asking to double the space.
But we're not doubling the space. In fact, we're reducing the number of beds.
You don't think the ambulance is a negative criteria? You don't think the ambulance, the burden
Let
on
me
the
ask you a
town for
question.
the ambulance, doesn't it negatively impact the volunteer corps?
Only if it's related to this application. Wait, if for some reason this application would compound that problem, the answer is yes, but we're reducing the number of beds. So the question is,
cost went up.
that's right, and someone needs to deal with that. But by denying this, are you gonna solve that problem? Or are they gonna just ignore you then? Because why would they need to cooperate with you at that point?
I'm worried that even if we do improve it, that it's not gonna get resolved.
Well, you know what? To be perfectly honest with you, and it's a shame this isn't a planning board, because I believe this is an issue that the mayor
and the governing body need to get involved with my client and ask for a meeting with them, with people who know this area, and read them the riot act. And and if Mr. Cali calls me up and asks me to arrange that kind of meeting with the mayor, I will do so. But that's how this issue is resolved, because it's an imposition on a public service that is under the jurisdiction of the governing body and not this board. And yes, I understand your concerns, and I think they are more than legitimate, and in fact, a little bit shocking. But by denying this application, you're not going to solve that problem. The only way to solve this problem is through the governing body of this municipality, and probably Ramsey, because I believe it's a shared, is it a shared emergency ambulance service?
No.
So that's even worse. So that's what has to happen.
Council, I sit up here, I'm not doing it as long as I think you've been doing it, but I've been up here a long time. I'm sorry. And I pride myself, my friends ask me a lot why I do this, okay? And they ask me how we come to decisions. And I always say that, I have to take into consideration what's good for the town. First of all, what's good for the applicant, what's good for the borough, what's good for the residents, okay? And I weigh all this a lot, and within the confines of the law, what we can do. I'm very careful with the comments that I made outside of sitting up here. I have to share agreement with some of my board members. Okay, like Mr. Martella, he just made a comment, and I don't want to escalate this thing crazy. And I do hear everything that you said about the powers of this board and what they can do. But he did raise something, it's like 3 months ago, 2 months ago, this came up. And, Mr. Gilchrist, and again, I appreciate his position, but some of the stuff hasn't been resolved, even though we said that it would be resolved. So, to your point, it's not necessarily, sir, something that is within the powers of this board council. Okay? There's part of me, based on what you just said, that I would almost say I would like to delay voting on this until some of these things that the board has raised, whether it's in the board's purview or not, are addressed with, as you pointed out, the council or the enforcement body of the borough, and understand that before, and then bring it back to the board with an understanding that there's been certain agreements here that satisfy not only the board, the borough, and the residents of both Allendale and Ramsey. Okay. And then I also bring in there too, I was not aware of the data that was just presented to us, where this number went up, and I know you were blindsided. Yeah. Okay. So
That has to be resolved.
that has to be resolved.
No argument for me
That
or
has to be resolved.
my client.
So there's part of me, council, that I would almost say that I want to see some of the stuff resolved
Before you're comfortable voting.
before I'm
on the
comfortable voting. Especially if, as far as I gave it. I can't say any better than he did. I know it's not what you want to hear, council. Applicant, I know it's not what you want to hear, but.
I know, I understand.
And unfortunately, because you're coming before the board and asking for this application to be approved, okay? Unfortunately, that as part of the testimony from the residents and the questions from the board, kind of opened it up to, now there's some things that, if we're going to approve this thing, there's some situations that we have here that the board and residents, and perhaps our council, if it's presented that way, need to have resolved. Whether it's part of this application of just building a building in simple terms or not.
I think that the larger question, Mr. Rubin, that may work in you and your client's interest here, if you do not ask the board to conclude deliberation and vote this evening, because it's clear where it would go. I think the bigger issue that's unresolved is the ambulance inquiry because there was a question posed to Mr. Kilcourse as to whether or not he's explored a limited time per day where an ambulance could be located on site, whether that was economically feasible for the applicant to explore. Mr. Kilcourse said they actually hadn't done that, so maybe it's in the applicant's best interest to actually consider that, because that seems to be, out of all these conditions, one of the quite larger ones, and one that was raised tonight based upon his data, that's worth consideration. So food for thought as to whether or not you'd like to conclude this evening with the vote or not. It's your application. If you say you want to vote tonight, you've concluded your case in chief. You're entitled to a board vote. I of course don't know where it goes.
We have 5 minutes.
Of course. Chairman?
Please, oh, I'm sorry, yes, please. Oh, that's all. It's a Mike's Engineering Insurance Group on it. The version. All right. Everybody who's here, we're back on the record. Okay? Council?
Yeah.
Giving you the floor.
Thank you. Obviously, the board has raised some legitimate concerns about the operations, the ongoing operation at the site that need to be resolved, clarified, and corrected. I'm asking the board to give us time to do that. Obviously, it's the holiday season, and January probably would be too quick. I think February 12th makes sense. I think we can accomplish what we need to accomplish, just so the board knows that's my intention to bring back home operations. Whether that's Mr. Kilcourse, someone else, or just someone else, will depend on the answers that I get in the intervening time period.
Only administration. I can agree to that. I just kind of going on a tangent second. I would appreciate it if at least, and if somebody else.
Yes,
helps.
yes.
I.
Oh, no,
tend to
it won't be me.
No,
There
no.
will be Mr. Kilcourse and someone else,
Fair enough.
or just someone else. But there will be someone here from operations who will be able to testify as the steps they have taken to correct the concerns that the board has identified during the course of this year.
Okay, council, give me one moment. Board members, what you just heard. Pardon me, sir. What we just heard. Are we, as members of the board, I'm comfortable with what council just presented. Is there any, Larry, I'm just gonna answer this discussion. Got it. Is there any conversation or are we good with this? I'm good with them coming back. The way council just presented. Okay. Please.
Before we, just two quick housekeeping things. We discussed the document type that was not in the record, Mr. Rubin. I'd like to mark this for the record as B1.
Fine.
Okay, and it's the Allendale Nursing Home and Assisted Living Statistics, 2008 through 2024, with the ambulance visit count to the facility that was discussed during the testimony.
Can I ask you a favor? Or can someone scan that and email it to me? So
Certainly.
that I can make sure the client has it?
As soon as I have a digital copy, I will get it over to you.
Thank
And then if you don't need this one,
That'd be great.
I will get it to you. And then the last thing, we're gonna go to February 12th. Is the applicant consent for
Yes,
the section for the board to act through that date?
Yes.
Thank you.
Through the end of February, just in case.
Very good.
Council, the pictures, I'm sorry, because you just introduced this. Apology.
They need, the neighbor still has the exhibit that was marked as, 01.
Yeah, and I think the board's gonna have to retain 01
I
because there's
think
only
the
one
board- I
copy
think
of it.
I
It was,
mentioned that.
yeah.
And the board will need to retain it, and she understands that. I explained that to her.
Okay, so where,
She has it.
you're
She'll
in
give it,
possession of that?
she'll give it to Linda.
Okay, I want it now.
Oh,
Yes, sir. I want it now. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, council? Good. This way, that's at least
Part of the record.
part of the record. Okay?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. You know, Mike, when, I don't want to put a can of worms when you come back, 'cause it's very limited, but if your engineer can amend the plans for our discussion tonight of things that were consented to, and at least send in a digital copy, or perhaps Mr. Breland to review, and us to confirm that those cleanup items have been performed,
No problem.
maybe, because
We
you have 2 months, maybe that.
Okay.
I
That
realize
won't
it's
be
an
an issue.
undertaking pre-vote, but
And,
Um,
How about the land? I'm going.
no, we're gonna put the tree, we're gonna show the elimination of the 12 spaces in the north and trees there instead. We're gonna show the 2 parallel spaces in the south and the trees buffering spaces and hopefully the.
Okay.
and look, it's not incumbent upon you to make these changes now. It's completely,
No, you asked, we'll do it.
But if
It was a reasonable
fine,
request.
it might only help.
Right, and you know what, maybe we'll figure out
Like
other changes to accommodate employees on the site if possible. A place that employees can do their thing outside without.
If they're gonna be superficial enough, I think that your
We've already talked about
operator
that.
can offer the testimony at the hearing if there are any questions. I think you could dispense with Mr. Jeffers returning, because they'll
Okay.
probably be high-level items, I suspect.
Yeah.
Fair by then, know if we get an answer for when fence get built.
Mr. Kilcourse will get information on it. Thank you. We gotta resolve what kind of fence. Did we dissolve 5 black or brown?
You can get brown.
We can get brown?
We get brown.
Brown it is.
Yeah.
Mike, one last item. I think it's clear, but just to be certain, Mr. Kilcourse and his colleagues are going to explore the viability, the economics, and the pragmatic reality of locating an ambulance on this facility or not. You will come back with an answer as to whether or not you can or cannot do that and why. I think the board is expecting that, just to be certain, Mr. Kilcourse.
We can work with the administration between now and then, come up with a solution that satisfies them. It needs to be solved.
And you had no other, or we can share this.
No, it's something right.
So, I mean, we went through all of it, so you know the other things that we chatted with council. Okay,
And
I'm
Mr.
comfortable.
Carroll and I work together.
Thank you. I'm comfortable with this. Board members, any further discussion? Okay, I don't have to open this up to the public, on any of this, do I?
Would you make an announcement that we're carrying it?
Well, a motion and a vote. So all you need is a motion and a vote to carry it.
For the members of the public that are here, in a moment, we're going to conclude the matter this evening. The applicant will be returning February 12th. Is that the date?
Yes. No
On
notice.
February 12th. The applicant is not required to renotice for that hearing, as they were not for the last public hearing. So this is your notice of that next meeting. Same time, same location on February 12th, 2025. And you can reappear then, and we will see you folks in the new year. Happy holidays
Can I
to
just
all.
raise one other question? This is town reorganized on January?
Yes.
Are we,
15th for
are
this
we
board.
going to lose board members?
No,
We're 100% sure of that? Yo, for the people that are here right now, yes.
I would say
No.
99%.
Yeah,
sure.
For the people that are sitting up here on the board right now because of the variance, you know, with not having council people out here or members of the,
Yeah, this is the
this is the
political
board.
zoning.
No, that's a great question.
I
that
just
is a very
wanna
good-
make sure that we didn't have to start all over again, or that we didn't have to get transcripts.
No.
We can be done, and then I'll help you.
All right,
Made a
so
big
the
people quit, Mike.
the people who are here will be part of this on February 12th.
Great.
All right,
Thank you.
so we're just,
You're gonna do a motion to adjourn this till the 12th of
a
February
motion to, yeah,
without further notice and with all times constraints waived.
okay, council, are we good with what you just said? So
We are good. That's exactly what, it's
Voice
exactly and all we need to do.
And-
A voice vote is fine.
Okay. Linda, all those in favor say aye. Nays? Seeing none? Carries council satisfied?
Happy holidays, everyone.
Me too.
Enjoy yourselves.
Thank you very much. Members of the public, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great holiday, everybody. Professionals, great holiday. Wait, we're not going, we're not going, I just got to conclude the right way. Okay, killing us. Dude. Okay, all right. Bringing it back here. Anything else that needs to be discussed? Any questions, comments from the public? Seeing none, bringing it back. Motion to close the meeting. Second.